Pace Chance, we're ready to go live. Let down. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm calling to order the September 16th City Council meeting. Councilmember Ray has an excused absence this evening, and Council President Walsh is attending remotely. As a reminder, we continue to have a remote aspect to our meetings, and both staff and members of the public may be participating in tonight's meeting remotely via WebEx. So the first item on the agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I invite you to join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice. We have a lot of special business this evening. Many, many items. So the first couple are employee items for two of our well-respected, well-loved staff that are moving on for other opportunities or for fun. And we want to make sure that we get to talk about them and thank them. So the first item of special business is ID 1757, and this is going to be recognition of Human Services Manager Monica Negrila. I'd like to invite Parks and Community Services Director Jeff Watling and Human Services Manager Monica Negrila to the lectern. Deputy Council President, if you'd like to join me. Great. These are really bittersweet moments, but I have to tell you, we do have the most amazing staff. And opportunities come up and they move to other jurisdictions or other opportunities. At least we get to tell you all the great things that we're proud of them for. But it is also sad for us because Monica has been such a big part of the team and such a mentor to me as a mayor in the work that she does in the human services field. Truly a leader in our region right here. Monica began with the City of Issaquah in December 2018 as the Human Services Coordinator when those services were contained within our Office of Sustainability. As she transitions to a new community with Skagit County, she will be the Director of Strategic Initiatives, and we want to celebrate Monica and this lasting imprint that her work here in Issaquah will make for many years to come. In 2020, those services were transferred to the newly named Parks and Community Services Department. She quickly was promoted to the role of Human Services Manager. And for these past 4 years, Monica has played a key role in the growth and professionalism of our Human Services Division. As the city responded to the pandemic, Monica led numerous human services related responses, including a food security collaboration comprised of local and regional food providers. There was no way how to book to do this. This was all done on the fly as fast as possible. Her leadership was instrumental as we navigated the increased need for rental assistance as unemployment and other pandemic-related issues impacted the housing market. Monica helped create and initiate the first City of Issaquah Equity Board. She is part of developing and implementing Issaquah's homelessness outreach program, has been another service that has just been shaped by her wonderful skill set. The pilot emergency homelessness program and our partnership with Motel 6 was led by Monica and is just another example of her creative approach to problem solving. The behavioral health program and the resulting team of professional staff were launched by Monica. There are many more examples to share. Monica, I want you to know how much we thank you, we celebrate you, and we recognize all of the positive work that you have contributed to making Issaquah such a special place. Deputy Council President DeMichelle would also like to say a few words.
Thank you so much. So for the past year and a half, I've had the honor of chairing the Eastside Human Services Forum. And from that perspective, I wanted to be sure to recognize that Monica has been a leader not only in Issaquah and made such a huge impact in our community, but she is so well respected and has made a huge impact on the entire East Side and is well regarded in Kirkland, Bellevue, Redmond. You've just made such a significant difference for people in need and people who are looking for help. It's just been unbelievable, and we are going to miss you so much. I know you're going to be a blessing to your new community, but we are going to miss you so much.
We have this plaque for Monica. We'd love to get it. Oh, you're so sweet. Just checking. Oh, these are hard. Okay. The next one is the recognition of our security analysts on Saleh. And I'd like to invite Administrative Services Director Autumn Monahan, Chief Information Officer Gus Taiwana, and Security Analyst on Saleh to the lectern. Come on up with me. Just a quick little story before Gus talks about the great work that ONS did. He did take me out to lunch and give me a tutorial on Android phones when I had no idea how to use it. And I thought that was so amazing that he would take that time and help me to the degree he did. I don't think he realized how much of a non-computer nerd the mayor is. But anyway, thank you for that, On.
Good evening, members of council, honors guests, and City of Issaquah staff. I stand before you today to recognize and celebrate an outstanding member of our IT team. Ans was hired in 2017 as a PC tech. He was exceptional at the skills of supporting our staff, members of the community, as well as our board and council members. In 2019, he was promoted to the cybersecurity analyst role. And in this role, he was instrumental at creating a new program that we did not have, but as well as coaching all of us what it means to have a cybersecurity program. Over the past 5 years, ONS has been instrumental in building and maintaining a robust cybersecurity infrastructure. And in the same process, he has coached the entire IT team what it means to have a cybersecurity system in place. Most notably, this year, ONS secured $300,000 in grants for our disaster recovery site that we were planning on building. Thank you, ONS, for that. An achievement that will last and impact our community with resilience and preparedness. On behalf of the city staff, I would like to thank you, ONS, for the 7 years of exceptional service. Your work has made Issaquah a safer place to live, work, and play for our residents. And as a friend, I'm going to miss working with you and enjoy your humor and support that you have for our team. At the end of the month, ONS embarks on a new adventure with his family. And I wish him best of luck and hope to stay in touch in the future.
ONS, I'd like to give you the Thank you, Gus. That was great. Also in September, we tend to have a lot of recognition for different events, activities, and teams that we have working in the city. So I have asked the council to help me present some of these today. And first is Deputy Council President Dee Michelle. And she will be doing the Diaper Needs Awareness Week proclamation. And I'd like to invite KidVantage Executive Director, Jack Edgerton, to the lectern. Hey, Jack.
So it's my honor to read this proclamation to you as well. Whereas diaper need, the condition of not being able to afford a sufficient supply of clean diapers to ensure that infants and toddlers are clean, healthy, and dry can adversely affect the health and welfare of infants, toddlers, and their families. And whereas national surveys and research studies report that nearly 1 in 2 families struggle with diaper need and 48% of families delay changing a diaper to extend the available supply. And whereas the average infant or toddler requires an average of 50 diaper changes per week over 3 years, and whereas there are no government assistance programs for the purchase or provision of diapers, and a monthly supply of diapers can cost as much as 8% of a full-time minimum wage worker's salary. Therefore, obtaining a sufficient supply of diapers can cause economic hardship to families. And whereas the supply of diapers is generally an eligibility requirement to participate in child care and quality early education programs that enable children to thrive and parents to work, and whereas the people of Issaquah recognize that diaper need is a public health issue, and only by addressing it be ensured that all children and families have access to the basic necessities required to thrive and reach their full potential. And whereas through their important work of addressing diaper need, diaper banks play a critical role in supporting families, improving infant health and well-being, and advancing our local and state economic growth. And whereas Issaquah is proud to be home to various community organizations that recognize the importance of diapers in helping provide economic stability for families and distribute diapers to low-income families through various channels, now therefore, I, on behalf of Mary Lou Pauley, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim the week of September 23rd through 29th, 2024 to be Diaper Need Awareness Week in the City of Issaquah, and encourage all residents to donate generously to diaper banks, diaper drives, and those organizations that distribute diapers to families in need to help alleviate diaper need in Issaquah and environs. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and seal of the City of Issaquah this 16th day of September, 2024. Jack, would you like to say a few words? Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Pauley and the council. Thank you for announcing this proclamation tonight. My name is Jack Edgerton. I'm the executive director of KidVantage, formerly Eastside Baby Corner. KidVantage is proud to have stood with you and the citizens of Issaquah for 34 years, meeting the needs of children and families. There are many needs that families have, and a diaper need is one of the most critical. A recent study by the National Diaper Bank Network shows that almost 50% of families lack the resources to provide an adequate supply of diapers for their infants. Not only is there significant emotional stress on caregivers and parents, but there is also an economic impact on our community. When a child cannot be dropped off at daycare or preschool due to inadequate diapering, their parents may miss work or school, which adversely affects their ability to purchase food or pay the rent. So far in 2024, KidVantage has provided over 1.6 million diapers into the community, well on our way to over 2.5 million for this year. In addition, we've supplied tens of thousands of other essentials, such as car seats, baby formula, baby food, clothing, and hygiene supplies. With over 3 decades of experience in Issaquah, KidVantage is so proud to partner with local organizations like the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank and the Issaquah School District to ensure that kids have the things they need to thrive. Throughout the pandemic and into 2024, KidVantage has been flexing its model to ensure equitable distribution of essentials for all children. For 2024, the need for diapers and other babies' essentials is running about 8% over our record increase of 38% in 2023. It's not just diapers, it's baby food, hygiene products, school supplies, clothing items. Every child needs to participate fully in school and in life. Thank you for discussing this critical issue with us tonight and by recognizing diaper need in our community. All of us at KidVantage look forward to continuing to work with the City of Issaquah and all of our community partners to ensure that kids have what they need to be healthy, safe, and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Deputy Council President. The next proclamation this evening is ID 1710, Fishaquah Proclamation, and I'd like to invite President and CEO of the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce, Julie Hartwig, and special guest Sammy the Salmon to join Councilmember Hall at the lectern.
Well, thank you very much for being here. It's my honor to present this proclamation. Growing up in Issaquah, Salmon Days was always one of the fondest memories that I had every year. So, and I always love a chance to meet Sammy the Salmon. So, whereas salmon have long held a special place in the heart of our community, and whereas salmon are such a part of our heritage, they adorn the logo of our city. And whereas each fall the salmon return to our creeks and lakes, the first salmon have arrived this year at the downtown hatchery. And whereas salmon have supported countless generations of residents and indigenous peoples, and whereas their lure has driven schools of visitors to our town to learn more about our beloved salmon, and whereas the popularity of salmon has created an identity for Issaquah, which in turn has tilted the scales of commerce in our favor. And whereas the instinctive nature of salmon to return home to spawn has instilled a strong sense of community and family, and has earned us Family Circle's accolades for one of the best towns for families in America. And whereas Salmon Days has its own infamous mascot, Sammy the Salmon, who is rising to the official occasion by welcoming visitors to join us in many happy returns in celebration of our festival's 55th year on Saturday, October 5th and Sunday, October 6th. Whereas salmon are the primary reason why why our internationally award-winning Salmon Days Festival is a Seafair sanctioned event and voted Best Washington Festival for 2022 by 425 Magazine and Travel Channel. Now, therefore, Mary Lou Pauley, the mayor of the city of Issaquah, does hereby proclaim, in honor of the Issaquah Salmon Days Festival, the first full weekend of October each year, our salmon-friendly city shall be known as Fishaquah. Thank you very much for being here. Did you have anything you'd like to say?
Council members and Mayor Pauley, thank you so much. I'm happy to accept this proclamation on behalf of the Chamber, and it's our great pleasure to bring this festival and Salmon Days to the community each year. So I have some goodies here that I brought with myself to share with each of you. Hope I got your sizes right, and if I didn't, let me know. Come on by the Chamber. I'll swap it out for you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Thank you, Councilmember Hall.
And we're not going to let you leave without a
And then we're gonna
picture,
take a
too.
picture for you.
Yes.
Of course. Oh, we want a
And we'll do
picture
everyone right now.
picture? Okay. One's here. You're going to have to help. Yes. Needs a little guidance. No, Julie. Yeah. No, you're fine. Can you get us all in, Wally? Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you so much, Councilmember Hall. Thank you, Zach. The next proclamation today is ID 1701, and I love this one because nobody knows what it means. It is our Constitution Day proclamation, and the reason we do it is this is a way for us to honor the hardworking and wonderful employees we have in our municipal court. So I'd like to invite Court Administrator Christy Shorn and Lead Judicial Specialist Nikki Meister to the lectern to join me. Hello, ladies. Good evening. Do we have Judge Scott? I wondered if he might be able to join us remotely, but I'm not seeing him. Okay, that's great. Oh, from Hawaii. So for this proclamation, whereas the United States Constitution has shaped the progress, values, and laws of this country, Washington State, and the city of Issaquah, and whereas September 17th is commonly known as Constitution Day and Citizenship Day, to commemorate the signing of the U.S. Constitution in Philadelphia on September 17th, 1787. And whereas National Constitution Day was developed to honor the principles of the Constitution and the striving towards a more perfect union, and Citizenship Day is recognized to welcome and celebrate new citizens of the United States in our community, and whereas the city of Issaquah strives to embody the values espoused in the Constitution, empower citizens to participate in government, and abide by its laws and promise, and whereas the Issaquah Municipal Court plays a vital role in upholding the Constitution, establishing and maintaining public trust and confidence through jurisprudence and consistent service to the Issaquah community, including the delivery of court services in the cities of Duval, North Bend, and Snoqualmie. And whereas the Issaquah Municipal Court has introduced innovative, problem-solving approaches to better serve the common welfare and abide by the ideals of the Constitution, and whereas it is appropriate to acknowledge and thank our Issaquah Municipal Court staff on this celebration of the 237th anniversary of the Constitution signing. I, Mary Lou Polly, Mayor of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim September 17, 2024, Constitution Day in the city of Issaquah. And I invite the community to join me in thanking Issaquah Municipal Court employees for their service and outstanding contributions and the vital role they play in upholding the Constitution. Would you like to say a few words?
But thank you so much for recognizing the court and our amazing court team and all they do on a daily basis. Just really can't tell you enough what great services that the court provides to the cities. So thank you.
So proud of this team. Next, I'd like to invite Councilmember Hunt up to address this next item, which is ID 1703, Information Technology, or IT, Professionals. Let's have our IT staff come up to the lectern. Chief Information Officer Gus Juana, and you have a lot of staff with you. Do you want to bring them all up, Gus, and get them all in the picture? Yeah, of course we do.
All right. Whereas National Information Technology Professionals Day is celebrated on the third Tuesday of every September to recognize the technical experts that ensure our computer and communication systems operate smoothly and effectively. And whereas technology continues to evolve and IT professionals help navigate these changes to provide efficient, inclusive, and communicative service to the employees and residents of the city of Issaquah. And whereas behind every technology stands, often silently and invisibly, IT professionals, technicians, analysts, developers, architects, engineers, administrators, managers, and directors who have been content to work behind the scenes to enable innovation and productivity. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic is a great example of Issaquah's IT team acting with foresight, preparation, and expediency, allowing staff to resume remote service to the public with limited disruption. And whereas the City of Issaquah wishes to show our appreciation for our IT professionals. Now, therefore, I, Councilmember Hunt, on behalf of Mayor Mary Lou Pauley of the City of Issaquah, do recognize September 17th, 2024 to be Information Technology Professionals Day in the City of Issaquah and invite the community to join me in thanking Issaquah's IT department for their service and outstanding contribution. And
Autumn or Gus, who is going to maybe say, welcome, Autumn.
I will invite Autumn up, and I wanted to also say, as the mayor shared earlier, I think I speak for all of us when I say we've all benefited from your help when we've come across IT issues, and we all thank you very much for all of the service that you've provided to us with our devices and to make sure our meetings run smoothly. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Autumn Monahan. I'm the Administrative Services Director, and I work with IT as one of our divisions. On behalf of the team, thank you so much for the acknowledgement. It's very special. Our team provides exceptional customer service, from the day-to-day help tickets that both council members and staff file all the time, to the 24/7 critical services that we support, including police, who have 911 dispatch and jail and patrol, services that don't sleep. To the enormity of projects that this team delivers and manages and maintains that help keep our city efficient and secure. So thank you for all that you do. And just on a personal note, I love working with this team, mostly when they're problem solving. It shows their intelligence, it shows their experience, and it shows their passion for public service. Just love it. So thank you so much.
That was lovely. Thank you, Autumn. Apparently, you don't take a lot of group pictures. Autumn, you're going to have to sort them out here. That's right. Wonderful. Thank you, Councilmember Hunt. Thank you, Autumn. Our last item of special business is ID 1704, Human Resources Professional Day Proclamation. I'd like to invite Councilmember Russell Joe and the following HR staff to the lectern. We have HR Director Stephanie Johnson here. Do we have Human Resources Analyst? Oh, we do. We do have everybody. Human Resources Analyst Jennifer Zink, Recruitment and Retention Coordinator Carmen Chamberlain, and HR Coordinator Lisa Gould. Welcome, ladies. Again, a little shuffling.
Welcome. What a crew. Proclamation. Whereas Human Resources Professional Day is celebrated around the world to recognize the important contributions of human resources professionals, and whereas human resources professionals are vital to the function, efficiency, and harmony of a modern workforce, and whereas human resource professionals develop policies and procedures to help the workforce keep the workforce safe, increase connection, resolve conflict, and whereas human resource professionals lead the workforce in establishing a safe, welcoming, and positive workplace by implementing trainings that advance equity, ensure compliance with local and federal laws, and advance personal growth and career development. And whereas the coronavirus pandemic has changed the workplace at the City of Issaquah and around the world and impacted staffing, safety, health, and regular operations. And whereas Issaquah's HR team has adapted swiftly and consistently in response to ever-changing pandemic conditions. And whereas our human resources professionals serve the public by recruiting, retaining, and training the best talent to the City of Issaquah. Now, therefore, Mary Lou Pauley, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, does recognize September 26, 2024 as Human Resources Professional Day in the City of Issaquah. I invite the community to join me in thanking the Issaquah Human Resources Department, for their service and outstanding contributions.
Thank you, Councilmember Joe, and Council Mayor, City Administrator Bob Quitz. This is the whole HR department. So we are a mighty team of 4, super happy with this team. They have servants' hearts. We certainly serve a great staff in the organization, you know, so everything from recruitment, labor, class comp, safety, training, you name it. We enjoy serving you all, so we thank you for that opportunity. And I thank you for the recognition. Anybody want to say anything? No? Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Councilmember Joe.
Yep.
We'll get a picture with you. There we go. Thank you. Thank you to all those that came to receive proclamations tonight, to our 2 very special employees who are heading on to other adventures. I know you love council meetings, but you are under no obligation to stay. So if you want to make your way out, that's great. We're going to continue with our meeting, and we're going to go next to the audience comment section. This is where members of the public may address council at this time, in person or virtually. If you've signed up in advance to make comments, you will be called on first. And if you are joining us virtually and would like to make comments, then please raise your virtual hand or send the host a chat message. If you're on the phone, press *3. And if you've joined by computer or smartphone, look for a hand icon. If you're in the room and did not sign up, I will still ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak for general audience comments or indicated a desire to speak this evening?
Yes, we have 5 people signed up to speak tonight.
That's great. Thank you. So if you're making comments this evening, you are invited to address the council regarding matters that are directly related to the Issaquah's programs, projects, and services or events. Comments related to political campaigns are not permitted. Please direct your comments to the whole council and not individuals. And while this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. When recognized, unmute your microphone if you're a virtual attendee, or please come up to the lectern in the center of the room. There is a button on the microphone to press to get the red light to make the microphone active. State your name, address, and relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you're attending virtually and you don't respond after your name is called, name or phone number, or if your connection is lost, we still have to continue on with our meeting. Please rejoin us if you can. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. Public comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process, and the city takes comments seriously. We thank you for taking the time to address us. City Clerk, can you please identify the first person who signed up to speak this evening?
Yes, Michael Wang.
Right. Come on up, Michael.
Nailed it. All right, is this working? All right, good evening, City Council, Mayor Pauly, and everyone in the council here. Hey, Wally, see you in the hood. My name is Michael Wong. I'm proud to call Issaquah my home for almost the past 8 years. My wife and I are raising 2 small kids at the foot of Squawk Mountain. A bit about myself, during the working hours, I'm a real estate development manager for Vulcan Real Estate, developing high-rise office in downtown Bellevue right now. We're actually just finished. In my off hours, I'm a Little League coach. I like exploring the trails here in Trailhead City, and I'm an archery enthusiast who's currently certifying as a level 2 junior Olympic archery instructor. That's a long phrase. I'm here before you today to petition the city to include an outdoor archery range. It's located on page 5 in the packet that was sent to you earlier in Tibbetts Valley Park. As Jeff and Robin noted in the parks draft that you guys were sent earlier in July, I believe, public outreach clearly shows that an archery range is the most endorsed new recreational amenity sought by our community. Before we get into the whys, probably the first thing coming in your head is like, it's archery, it's bow and arrow, isn't it a weapon? It's kind of dangerous. Well, to that I say the club was probably the first weapons that humans invented, and now we have the great games of baseball and golf. So the context of how something is used is vitally important to whether how we want to classify it as dangerous or not. So in order to create a safe archery range, the design contemplated is also a brief little snippet of it. It was included in that packet, for an enclosed range that's already been built in Colorado Springs and Eden Prairie, Minnesota. which is a suburb of Minneapolis. I'm kind of the guy I'm not an early adopter. I think unlike Mark Twain, I'm a second mouse gets the cheese kind of guy. And, this archery range has been proven for 20 years as an outdoor backstop. Arrows have not been able to escape it. I spoke with the park supervisor there, and they've confirmed not a single arrow has escaped this enclosed design, which is pretty clever, really. And Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops absolutely love having this as amenity, as a public amenity that anyone can access in their park system. So if the range kind of sounds reasonable to you to this extent, what about accidents, right? I mean, if you're like me, I'm a bit of a skeptic. I need stats and facts from legitimate sources, not from the QAnon blog. So what I have for you today, also included in that packet are snippets and resource references. NIH, which is the Department of Public Health, and the NEISS, which is the National Electronic Injury Surveillance System, which is also a U.S. government entity, and they collect injuries on sports statistics and facts like that and conduct studies along with that. And that's also the same information that for-profit insurers use to determine what your risk premium is for a city to run a sport like this. Well, the information is resoundingly clear. Archery is a safe sport. You are more likely, on a per thousand basis, so I'm not playing funny math games with you, on a per thousand basis, it is safer than baseball, basketball, skateboarding, and football. You are 25 to 45 times more likely to end up in the hospital with that sport versus practicing target archery. Target archery is in the same risk category as bowling, badminton, and ping pong. It's even safer than golf, believe it or not. And I love golf. So what does this cost, right? I mean, this sounds great and everything, but what does something like this bring to the city? Well, the exact archery range, according to the city of Eden Prairie, was $20,000 in 2004. I know a lot's happened then, inflation, it's Minneapolis, different costs. So what I did is I took it through the Mortenson Cost Index, blamed my day job on it, and I ran it to what's $20,000 in Issaquah in today's dollars. That's $33,000, but you're like, Michael, it's not going to cost the Subaru Outback with a modest trim package. Let's just add some Pacific Northwest skepticism to it. So let's call it $100,000, right? Let's triple it. Well, hate to sound like an infomercial here, and I'm talking as fast as one because I only have 5 minutes, but right now there's a 50% match from the Washington Recreation and Conservation Office, which provides 50% grants for an archery range. We're not going to get that deal anywhere else. I mean, that's fantastic. Applications are open now, and they're due October 31st. So if we act a little faster now, that 100,000 could be 50,000. It's probably less than what you spend on office supplies each year. So one last thought, probably the most important, is why do this? Well, I was looking at all your prior minutes, and I like to do my due diligence, and I was looking at the park board's minutes as well. And one of the expressed objectives of the city council board is to appeal to a broader, diverse demographic in our city. I mean, most of our stuff is great. We appeal to that one standard deviation. That's 70% meet, which really covers most of us. But what about the fringes? Well, archery, like golf, is safer. Archery, like golf, but safer, is a sport that you can play well into your golden years. It's very senior friendly. 12% of Americans have mobility issues. People in wheelchairs and mobility issues can't go running down a football field or go down the half pipe on a skate park. I spoke with Executive Director Clark Halverson, who also wrote an endorsement letter for this range, which is also included, that Tisha sent to you earlier, supporting this. I need 30 seconds.
Sentence or two and wrap it up. That'd be great. Thank you.
And the last thing on the demographic is that archery is one of the top sports in Asia. Asians have the most gold medal wins in the Olympics. Asians make up 27% of Issaquah, which is 10,000 of our 38,000 constituents here. An archery range provides amenity that supports what this council and the Parks Board stated goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael, is Clark Halverson here today or just? He's virtual. You do see him virtually, City Clerk? Okay, if we want to get Clark up next, that would be great.
Clark, you're our next public comment speaker, so I'm making you a panelist now, so you should see the option to unmute and can choose to turn your video on if you'd like.
Great, thank you. Sorry I didn't make it up to be in person today. So my name is Clark Howard, and I'm the Executive Director for Outdoors for All Foundation, and joining tonight to express our support for the proposed Junior Olympic Archery Range at Tibbetts Valley Park. As an organization, we're dedicated to making outdoor recreation accessible for people of all ability. We see this project as a fantastic new opportunity to promote inclusive outdoor experiences for everyone in the community. This proposal also aligns with our organization's broader expansion to the east side, particularly with the development of our new Lake Sammamish site. We believe the range would provide meaningful engagement for youth, family, seasoned archers, and individuals with disability, further strengthening Issaquah's reputation as a leader in inclusive outdoor recreation. Thanks for the time, and excited if we can be part of any new opportunities for your constituents.
Thank you, Clark. City Clerk, is there someone else signed up to speak?
Yes, next we have Phil Peterson, who is also virtual. So give me just a moment here. Phil, I'm making you a panelist, so you should see an option to unmute. Go ahead.
Oh, can you see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
How about that?
Yep.
Does that work?
Yes.
Nice. All right. Thank you, Mayor Lupali, City Council, for your time. This is in regards to the non-motorized street improvement proposal on Squawk Mountain. My name is Phil Peterson. I've lived at 265 Mount Olympus Drive Southwest on Squawk Mountain for 12 years. I have 4 kids, all in the Issaquah School District. My daughter's in the high school, 2 boys in middle school. I'm actually live at Central Park. My boys are in the youth junior high, junior football team. My daughter's biking, so if I seem distracted, just being a dad a little bit as we're meeting, but love where we live. So grateful for your work in the city, and just wanted to give some feedback just from our neighbors in regards to this plan. I just want to say thank you so much for putting in this proposal for a sidewalk. That's been something that we've been hoping for, at least me and Steve and others, since we moved in. Mount Olympus Drive Southwest is an arterial road. Cars go pretty fast, and our kids getting up early, especially in the winter months, when it gets so dark, to have that sidewalk there will really help us feel better about them walking to their bus stop. The reason I'm just bringing this to your attention is the proposal is giving the option of either having a bike lane or not. And I would propose and ask, since I live on that street with about 13 other houses from Mount Pilchuck up to that turn that goes into Mount Park Boulevard, I'd ask not to have the bike lane, and let me explain. I love the sidewalk because it's taking that west side, or rather that east side of the street. It's unusable. It's giving it something usable. On the west side of the street, it's currently this large shoulder that if you put a bike lane there, it basically takes it from a multi-use purpose for walking, running, biking, and parking to now exclusively just bikes. And so for me, our house, we opened up the front yard so we could be connected to our neighbors. We like people stopping by. The bus stop's right there. It's allowed us to connect with more people. And so I'm just concerned with it just being an exclusive bike lane, that'll restrict that kind of community engagement for us. And I think the other part for us is just without parking, it's going to make it really difficult on that stretch of road, because there's really no other alternatives for if people come over to watch a Seahawk game. We'll have people like we did on Monday to come over for a draft party with kids. There's cars. We won't have a place for them to go. Biking, I think, is really important. I think my experience when I work from home is there's a lot of cars, there's a lot of walkers, not as many bikers, especially 8 months of the year. And so I think bikers can use that shoulder. That makes it multi-purpose. But I just ask for your just consideration in that. And I also want to just acknowledge John Larson. He's the transportation program coordinator. He's been awesome. And so we were emailing back and forth. And so he's aware of this too, but I just thought I'd just take an opportunity to let you know, just because I know it's going to come up in the next, I think, weeks or months ahead. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. City Clerk, do we have others signed up to speak?
We do. Next, we have someone in the room, Kim Lee.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Polly. My name is Kim Lee, Issaquah resident and president of Roadstone, which is the real estate development arm of Lakeside Industries. There's an item on the regular agenda of tonight's meeting pertaining to transfer of development rights, or TDRs, how we lovingly call them. I won't get into the details as I see that the staff has a presentation planned for later tonight, but I will say that it's been a lot of work to get to this point in seeking authorization to proceed from you all, as Councilmember Martz knows. And for that, I simply want to thank staff, for members of the Planning, Development, Environment Committee, and as well as council and the mayor as a whole for your valuable time and consideration in getting to this point. We at Roadstone and Lakeside are here. We are engaged. And we're excited to realize this great vision formulated in partnership with the city many years ago to bring another great project to Issaquah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Anyone else signed up, City Clerk?
Yes, Connie Marsh, who is with us virtually. Connie, I will make you a panelist now.
Oh, popping in and out. Okay, hi, Connie Marsh, live on Squawk. So I'm going to start by saying I just love it when community members come out and speak about their passions in the community. And so archery guy, whoever you are, that was awesome.
Archery guy.
And of course I live on Squawk, and so we have been waiting for 20 years for a sidewalk on Squawk. So it's a real bonus when somebody from the neighborhood other than the usual people come out and speak to it. So I appreciate that so much. Now, me, I'm the good and the bad. So you're going to get both at the same time because there's been some good, but with caveats. So I'm going to start with the landslide repair. Bonus, we got the city to listen and they did a peer review. And now the mitigation for the landslide area is actually in a reasonable place. So awesome. Now, I never got re-notified that it was going to be approved, even though I'm a party of record. And I should have been notified again, and it didn't get on the active projects list as new information. So that's bad, right? So there are things in that approval, which is on the consent agenda, which does not address how we're going to use the trees as habitat trees, etc. So there's a few things that I would have changed had I known anything about this before today. But y'all put it on the consent agenda. It's really hard to access it. So we've got to figure out how to make this all right. Now, the same thing is happening with the conservation easements for the Lakeside TDRs. They went back and they are way better. The conservation easements are way better. However, we do still have conflicts in the language, especially as it pertains to stormwater, where 4.1.4 contradicts 5.1.16. And so when somebody is going to be trying to use those conservation easements, it's going to be hard. So while they're way better, they actually haven't been out for review in a way that they could still be finalized. And I don't know why they don't ever go out for review again. They just come to you like you're supposed to know the details of a conservation easement. So I would like to see this feedback loop fixed so that we could have a better product. And it's just not there yet. But I want to say again, the conservation easements are way better. And the mitigation for the landslide is way better. So yay. And let's do some more. And the last one is PPC passed you through the comprehensive plan, but they said that they were not able to review anything outside of the goals and policies. So all of that other language surrounding them, they are saying they did not review, and they are asking you to review it because they did not do it. So I wanted to make sure that it came through as clearly as that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Connie. City Clerk, is there anyone else signed up to speak or indicating a desire to speak?
No.
Well, I want to thank everybody who came this evening. We heard from council, we heard up on the dais from several speakers supporting a junior Olympic style archery range. We had some comments on the Lakeside transfer of development right items that is on today's agenda. And we also heard from several folks in the community about support for sidewalk and on Squack Mountain, but concerns about bike lane options. We also got comments on the conservation easements that are on today's agenda and the landslide project, also on today's agenda. And lastly, just a bit more information about planning policies comments to staff from their last meeting. So thank you all for bringing that to the council and the mayor's attention. As a reminder, written comments can be submitted any time. So if you have additional comments, please submit them to citycouncil@issaquah.gov. And we're going to move on to our consent calendar. So this evening, I do not have any comments on the consent calendar, but are there any committee chairs or chair designates who would like to report on any of the calendar items? I am not seeing an indication. Is there anybody willing to make a motion? Oh, sorry, jumped the gun. A few more things I have to say. The consent calendar was distributed to council in advance, and if it's authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved with one motion. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have.
They have.
Thank you. Does any council member desire to remove any item from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? I'm not seeing any indication. Now can I get a motion? Deputy Council President?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any council discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those, oh, I keep forgetting, Council President. Thank you very much. You don't sound like yourself, though. It's weird. Is there any opposed? That carries unanimously, 6-0. And the next item, we're going to move into some regular business now, is AB 8881, the 2025 Arch Work Program and Budget. And I'd like to invite Senior Planner Kristen Leeson to the podium. Welcome, Kristen and Lindsay.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just here briefly. Kristen Leeson, Senior Planner with Community Planning and Development Department. And I'm here briefly just to introduce two of the items on our agenda tonight. And one is Agenda Bill 8881, which is the 2025 Arch Work Program and Budget. And as you know, each year, Arch and Arch staff, the staff liaisons in the Arch Executive Committee or Executive Board create an annual work plan of both local and regional items. And this year's budget, this year's work program stems from the Arch Strategic Plan, which is adopted earlier this year. Arch staff and the Executive Board also developed the budget for the 2025 year, and this year a little different. They've also included an percentage estimate for the 26 budget year, which helps with biennial budget planning for all of its member jurisdictions. So it's the responsibility of Arch member jurisdictions to act on and take action on the proposed work plan and budget, so that's what you're here to do tonight. Also on tonight's agenda is Agenda Bill 8901, and the Arch Executive Board and the administration are asking for the reallocation of funds from the Kenmore Supportive Housing Project to the Redmond Supportive Housing Project. So I've done the easy part, and now I'm going to let Lindsay Masters, Arch Executive Director, present and answer any questions.
Great.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pauley. Thanks for having me tonight. As Kristen mentioned, I'm here to talk to you about a couple actions in front of you. One is our annual visit to talk to you about our budget and work program proposal. And to do that, I'll set that in the context of a broader planning process that our organization undertook in the last year. And then I will talk as well about a reapproving funds that were committed to a project in Kenmore, now cited in Redmond. So to kick it off, I just wanted to talk to you again. I was here not too long ago talking about our strategic plan when it was still under development and giving you a sense of where that was headed. But I wanted to kind of recap where that ended up and kind of the action plan moving forward. So we started this process in 2023 at the direction of our executive board, wanting to take a look at the big challenge that all cities had in front of them as you're undertaking planning for significantly more affordable housing than we've ever had to do in the past, and figuring out how we can leverage the efforts of the Arch Coalition to really support you in those efforts. The process helped us to really redefine and amplify our mission, figure out what we've been successful in and how we can amplify those going forward, set out a vision for the future, as well as some key action items that we thought could really move the needle as we look forward. So I just have a couple of slides to highlight the key strategies that came out of that, which are then going to help explain some of the work program and budget priorities. So first, we wanted to talk about what's working with Arch as an organization and where do we need to make some changes, and do we have opportunities to improve as an organization. So there's some interim things that we're doing. We're also looking longer term, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. We also wanted to really acknowledge the larger role of the state in recent years in not only setting forth what kinds of funding tools local jurisdictions have around housing, but also looking at land use and housing policy more globally. So we wanted to figure out how to respond to that reality and work better as a coalition to really drive policy changes that are going to help us in our shared mission. We also wanted to, keep an emphasis on our bread and butter work at the ground level, trying to spur development of tangible, affordable housing projects in all of our communities. So we have an emphasis on investing in more support for those really high impact, important special projects. Some of those are on public property. We're looking as well at how to utilize partnerships with faith-based communities and figuring out how to spur those developments to get out of the planning stage and into actual construction. We also wanted to continue our commitment that we are going to provide a cost-effective vehicle for all of our cities to have local incentive and other affordable housing programs. So continuing to maintain that function as your local steward and having a shared cost-effective model for you to do that. In light of that, we also, I think, took a look at whether or not we should expand our services and figure out how to meet the broader range of needs of residents in affordable housing. And I think the board really wanted to keep our focus a little more narrowly on the production and maintenance of affordable housing and looking at partnerships to address those broader ranges of needs. So into the proposal itself for 2025 through 26, the board went through a number of months of discussion, looking at several different options of how to move the strategic plan forward. As Kristen mentioned, they developed for the first time a biennial budget recommendation. We've historically only done annual processes and wanted to recognize most of our membership is on a biennial budget cycle now, so making your planning process easier and hopefully more predictable for 2026. And at the end of the day, we ended up deciding to propose additional investment in staffing to, one, first and foremost, focus on that targeted support for special projects at the local level. So staff that could provide the expertise in affordable housing financing, development strategies and partnerships, and really provide a lot of technical assistance to bring all those partnerships together. And then second, adding a staff position that would be supporting a whole range of other services from communications, policy advice and government affairs, really focused at that state legislative level and how to leverage all of the voices of our cities to be effective in that space. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the work program. The portion of the budget funded by the city of Issaquah in the budget is about 5.8% of the total. So you've got the numbers there in front of you on the slide. I want to walk through the priorities that are highlighted in the work program. So each year we do ask the board to identify, out of all the many things we are aspiring to accomplish, what are going to be our priorities. You'll see a lot of these kind of speak back to the strategic plan. First, we have an increased emphasis on education and engagement. We're already starting to implement some of these efforts. Earlier this year, we had an educational event. Thank you, Councilmember DeMichelle, for your attendance, as well as a guided tour of one of the first permanent supportive housing projects in East King County in Bellevue that we partnered with Plymouth Housing to provide for Arch membership. We're looking forward to doing a lot more of that and providing those as more regular opportunities with a little more staff capacity. Back to sort of how we're looking at ourselves as an organization. We did raise a lot of good issues and questions during the process about whether our governance model really meets the needs of the moments and works well with how cities are structured. We decided that we needed to take more time to undertake an intentional study to really look at that. We've already started that process, formed a small task force of board members, and put aside some funds to hire a consultant to help us answer some of those questions. But I do think we had a robust dialogue already and have a good sense of what questions we need to answer and where there might be some opportunities to improve. We also highlight in our priorities, again, that focus on state and regional legislation and funding. We really wanted to frame this right in having our focus be on sort of facilitating legislative priorities that are going to help us either add funding for affordable housing or reduce the cost of affordable housing development. So looking at funding and policy solutions to help us with that. And then continue that conversation amongst our membership about what are the revenue proposals that we want to support that can help you in meeting those needs. Just on this chart here, you will see a trend we have started to experience year after year, which is many more requests for the affordable housing funds that we have at the local level than we have available dollars. We did receive over 50 million in asks for this funding round. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can, but we're going to obviously not be able to meet all of those. And then we did highlight, again, this focus on local planning and support to special projects. So this is really putting more dedicated staff capacity towards this effort. We also have a carryover priority here as well to support cities in thinking about how your rent policies in affordable housing projects can address the rising cost burden that we've been seeing across the board. And then finally, I just want to highlight some of the work we've been doing directly with City of Issaquah. We have a variety of different efforts that we support in different cities depending on their needs and what they see as most useful from Arch. We're excited about the IHIP program, newly branded, supported with some of those dedicated sales tax revenues. We've been working really closely with Issaquah staff to roll that out, market it broadly to the development community, align all the application processes with the good programs that we already have in place. And we are hoping to bring you some recommendations around that in the next year. It'll be a little bit of a building year to increase demand for the funds, find those opportunities where there are sites that are available to develop, and then work with folks to put together good proposals. So we're just at the start, but excited to see where that goes. And we're also optimistic about where your Pioneer program might go. We were involved in some of the development and technical analysis of some of those options, and are certainly going to be supporting the implementation when you have a project to take advantage of that. We are also actively talking about middle housing implementation. We undertook a really in-depth study with a whole multi-jurisdictional work group and an economic consultant to help build us an economic model to look at the feasibility of a whole variety of different types of middle housing in all the jurisdictions that are part of ARCH. We concluded with some really clear and compelling recommendations and are now working with individual city staff to look at how to refine some of those options for you to consider at the local level. The bottom line, we're excited that it's an opportunity to promote affordable home ownership, something that we don't often have opportunities to promote, but that there's huge demand for, as you know. And then we've started conversations with planning staff about implementing the multifamily tax exemption that is going to be offered for in relation with the High Street development. And then finally, again, our ongoing year after year work to steward the existing affordable housing that had been created already through your past efforts, development agreements, and inclusionary program. We had a couple of good successes. We've had an uptick in sales in our homeownership program in Issaquah. We've been working also with staff on how to deploy some new marketing strategies that are going to help homeowners to overcome the current high interest rates and be able to sell their units in a more timely manner. And I think that's the end of my remarks. I'm happy to take questions before moving on.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any questions? Deputy Council President, followed by Councilmember Hall.
Okay, I'm just pulling up. So I had sent a question, and I just thought I'd surface that for council members regarding where the funding for the ARCH support would come from, whether it be from the general fund or from our 1/10 of 1%, now known as IHIP fund. And just a suggestion that perhaps we could look at taking it from the IHIP so that we don't impact the general fund as much as it could be in a year where we have a very challenging look at our general fund balance. So that was just a question. I just thought I'd surface that and maybe hear what Kristen, thank you so much for your prompt response as well.
You're welcome. So this is not a simple answer. So there are a couple of different options. One is that potentially you could, and this needs to be discussed during budget time and so forth, but one option is to potentially reduce the amount of funds given to the ARCH General Fund, Housing Trust Fund, and use those to pay for some of the administrative fees. We are also talking with the city attorney about whether or not we can use the 1590 and 1406 funds to pay for this as well. So we'll get back to you on what we can and cannot do with that.
Thank you. I'm also going to add Council President after Councilmember Hall.
Mine's super quick. I know we're planning, thank you, by the way. I know we're planning on updating our housing strategy work plan next year, right? So I was just wondering if ARCH was going to be a part of that process and if that needs to be added.
Council President.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you can go over in this budget what the changes again are to staff ads and what their roles will be as they relate back to your new work plan.
Sure. And is it back on? I think it flashed off for a second. So there's 2 new staff positions proposed with this budget. One is going to be a senior planner dedicated to those special projects and local planning efforts, again, to facilitate development of public surplus property, partnerships with churches, and a range of other hopefully exciting special project opportunities. And then a second position that's going to be dedicated to communications, policy, and government affairs. So combining a few different functions in one, but hopefully able to help us move forward a whole range of strategies, including the education and engagement efforts, the work at the state legislative level, and others.
Council President? Looks like your hand is down, so I'm assuming the answer was good.
Thank you.
Councilmember Martz.
Have we looked at this at any committee?
No, past practice is that it comes directly to council.
Okay. I ask because we saw maybe, gosh, I'm going to say it was 5 years ago, and somebody's going to tell me, no, it was 8 or 10 years ago, a step change in our contributions towards overhead on Arch to do more of these types of programs to help Arch reconfigure around more than just funding housing projects. And so to see a similar ask now, again, sort of makes me wonder, the trend line of what we've been contributing towards operating costs for Arch and what we've gotten for that in that intervening. And, this comes back to our general understanding what we're getting for our dollars investing in various things. And it's hard for me to tease out what the recent trend line has been with Arch and what we've gotten for our dollars. You always have to give the caveat of we don't expect to get a major project all the time. And our last major project, of course, was YWCA. But that was quite a while ago. And so it's really hard for me to understand here exactly what we're getting, both what we've gotten for the dollars that we invested the last time we were asked to step forward towards a new, more robust operating model, and what we would get, what the difference is with, again, going to an even more robust operating model.
I think, Lindsay, are you able to answer that? Because I do believe that came right after your appointment to your position, the first restructuring. And then City Administrator Bob Quitz, if you want to add after that, that'd be great.
Sure. So I'm happy to speak to that. I think what you might be recalling from maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we did an organizational study and a consultant study about our staffing capacity to steward all the existing programs in affordable housing in our member cities. There was some highlights about gaps in our level of monitoring of certain issues. And so we decided we need to take a hard look, audit our programs and our staffing levels, and figure out how to right-size that to be able to maintain adequate services there. So out of that, we put in place some dedicated staff for our rental and homeownership programs, of which we have a lot of those homeownership units in Issaquah. And so that has been right-sized to a place where we feel pretty good about not having kind of too much staff, but having just the right amount. So as we grow, we are committed to looking at that every year and having the board make sure we're still providing adequate services. And then this current go around, we're not just looking at kind of how to make sure we're maintaining the past. We're looking at how to implement new strategies in the future. And so, part of that is with a city like Issaquah, if you really want those efforts to get off the ground and find your next significant major project, we want to spend a lot of staff time and capacity in supporting that. And one of these two positions is going to be really important for that work. We've started some of that with the existing staff we have, but they are stretched pretty thin supporting that across a lot of other cities and administering all the capital funding, of which IHIP will be a new stream that we add into that. So we think it's going to be a value add, and you're going to see fruits from that over time, and hope you'll agree.
Councilmember Moritz, you typically have an idea of the kind of data you want to see. Were you thinking of something specific that I would like to see these numbers presented in this way? How many housing units everywhere? How many in Issaquah? Did you have any specific?
The next time this comes up, let's have a conversation like that.
That is a great
Because
suggestion.
I'm not ready today to say a specific set of things.
But you want to talk about it?
Yeah,
Great.
next time. Thank you.
City Administrator, did you want to add something?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. If you recall, there was a discussion here a little while back about the strategic plan process that Arch went through. I serve as the city's representative on the Arch board on behalf of the mayor. I brought back concerns from the council to the Arch board about this expansion, and there were several meetings of discussion about the expansion. This boiled down then to the two positions that Lindsay mentioned. There was not unanimous support by the board for one position, and that was the legislative outreach position. A number of communities, including Issaquah, voted against the addition of that position. However, the majority of the board agreed, and it was added to the budget. The other position, the planner position, as Lindsay has mentioned, is real critical to not only Issaquah, the number of hours that ARCH staff spent as we looked at the Pioneer Program project, for example, was significant. And as now the council has made money available for this additional housing fund, ARCH staff has taken the lead in working with us to come up with an application and then review proposals. So I would say that we are getting our money as far as the production of housing. I'll continue to disagree with ARCH getting into the legislative business. And so I'll be a member of this task force that the ARCH board is putting together to talk about governance issues, and I think that's to be a critical next step. So just to fill in a little bit of where Issaquah is at and Issaquah's voice at the ARCH board table.
That is incredibly helpful.
Great.
And Wally, thank you so much. And I'm with it now.
But I'm still noting that when we revisit this, you'd like to have a more robust conversation, which is great. Thank you, Councilmember Mertz. I have a comment if the Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. I was late to the party, but thanks for letting me speak. The mayor and I talked about affordable housing this weekend when we were at the Salmon on Sunset event, and it is a hard nut to crack to try to figure out how to get units into Issaquah, et cetera, and to not make them necessarily stand out in one building alone, but to integrate them into a project with other levels of income for housing. Just to give an idea in terms of what our neighbors that are in ARCH units are making, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your presentation. It looks like for a one-person family, it's about $103,180 for an ARCH unit. And I don't know if that's exactly correct, but I'm going off the pinnacle of real estate information, Zillow here. For a two-person family, it looks like $117,920. Three-person, $132,660. Four-person, $147,400, and five-person, $159,192. Do those numbers sound about right in the range for what we typically see?
That might be. It sounds like you're looking at a 100% AMI unit, and the bulk of our homes are probably below that, but there are some at that level.
Okay, so when it says new ARCH limits made and it's ARCH restricted, it can be a different ARCH type unit in terms of 100% or 80% or 60%. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So each city just sort of determines what your policy requirements are for those developments. We help to implement that and sort of follow whatever the city sets as their policy and their code requirements. So we have homes as low as 50% AMI. We even have some all the way up to 120. But I think the numbers you're looking at are 100% AMI.
Okay. And so those units were supported by ARCH funding to help put them into our community and to help give us some units that were integrated into other developments along the way. And some of them could be 100%, some of them could be 80%. You might not even know which units are ARCH if you looked at the outside of the building. Is that true?
True, except for that we wouldn't have likely put direct funding into the development, but our services support the stewardship, which is funded in part by our membership dues from cities and in part from administrative fees on the resale of the homes.
Okay. Appreciate that. When we talk about affordable housing, there's so many different nuances to it. I really appreciate that information. I think my general point is that for this ARCH unit, at least, even for a one-person household at 100% AMI, you can't make more than $103,180, which seems like a fair salary, but at the same time, it's not a huge salary for the East Side. So I would just urge my colleagues to keep those numbers in mind when we're talking about affordable housing and what the numbers are really underneath it and how we can try to make our community more welcoming to more affordable housing units in the future. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Joe. Is the council okay with me asking a question of Lindsay? Well, I'm going to give her a compliment first, though. Lindsay, thank you for coming and thank you for the presentation. This is an incredibly complex and difficult subject for most people to understand. It's almost like a university doctorate level course on how these projects happen, but I really appreciate our original approach to it because I think you get more projects out of this, and I'm glad that we're a piece of this. The legislative advocacy has me a little bit concerned. I'm the president of the Sound Cities Association, 38 cities. When we prepare a legislative agenda, all 38 cities have to agree on what we're going to lobby for. And I know in the world of housing, the starting point for many cities is different. We have different mixes, we have different needs, and we have different constraints. How is that going to carry forward into the legislative agenda such that 5 or 6 cities are not in support of something that the other cities would like to do? Because that tends to be a very divisive, difficult conversation. And so how do you take into account that our own legislative agendas on housing may not all be saying the same thing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and part of why there was a lot of wrestling over how do we do this, should we do this. I think the driving force was we know part of the solution has to be some additional funding. We've got a lot of great projects in the pipeline.
We need money.
We don't have the funding to build them, and legislative solutions are some of the only answers out there, other than some additional private dollars that we hope will continue coming into the system. So with that, I think in mind, we really wanted to figure out how do we focus this so that we're not trying to have a advocacy position on every housing issue out there. We're trying to figure out what are going to be the drivers that actually move the mission forward in the meaningful ways. And then how do we set up a process that we are not requiring complete unanimity on every issue, but we're providing a menu of options for cities to figure out how can they align and advocate better as a coalition. So how we attempted to do that this year, I think we're trying things out and we're seeing what works. This year we did a lot of upfront outreach with all of the city's staff, government affairs staff, planning staff, some city's lobbyists, and really tried to flag, okay, what do we think are going to be the big opportunities? Of course, there's a lot of uncertainty all around for next legislative session. And then are there any concerns that cities have with some of the ideas we wanted to explore? I think we've been talking about real estate excise tax and whether there's changes in at least the existing structure or new local REIT options that we could advocate for. And so we wanted to have conversations about that. We also saw that there are probably 5 to 7 different cities with churches who are actively trying to figure out how do they get affordable housing done on their properties. So we highlighted that as another important topic and wanted to get feedback about what's helpful for us to look at carving out as a priority there. So it's a kind of a member-driven and sort of co-designed approach to how do we come up with these priorities, and then we bring that back to our board for them to discuss, and ultimately we send it to you as information for you to consider in your local process and setting your agenda and priorities. And if there is sort of alignment at the end of the day, we hope that we can help facilitate that coordination and, again, amplify your voices.
And that gives me some comfort, but I am really worried about the areas of non-alignment because cities within the list that you showed us that are members of ARCH have different levels of transportation connectivity and may, during different decades, opt for certain options and not others. And I'm really concerned that a one-size-fits-all, if this is good for Bellevue, it would be good for Issaquah. We may be 20 years out of the game in terms of the kinds of incentives they would like to see the state put on the table, and we wouldn't want that. And so I just want to make sure in those areas of non-agreement, we aren't having all cities we just have to deal with that. It's going to be very tough. Yeah. But just to be respectful of looking at the variety of cities we have, we're not all in the same place. We're decades apart in some of our approaches, and I don't want to, it would be very awkward for us to be supporting something that will not work in Issaquah and is in disagreement with our own legislative agenda. So thank you for that. Yeah. Any other questions for Lindsay or Kristen? I have a process one. Kristen, are we, on my script, is the second AB the reallocation of ARCH? Because I don't have that number written down in my script. And would you like us to take these votes one at a time?
Would like you to take the votes one at a time,
okay.
Please.
So the reallocation, what is the agenda bill number on that one? Okay, thanks.
AB 8901.
Sorry, it's 8901. Perfect. Okay, so there's no more Councilmember Hall.
Oh, sorry, I actually did have a question about the other one. Is there a separate presentation? Oh, okay, great. I'll wait for that then.
Okay, so would council like to go ahead and vote on the information presented so far and the proposed motion? Sure. If you're ready, you guys are ready to take a vote, right? We're good. Yes.
I move that we approve the 2025 Administrative Work Program and budget for a Regional Coalition for Housing, ARCH, as recommended by the ARCH Executive Board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now we're ready for council discussion on this first vote. Deputy Council President?
Okay, excuse me while I get back to my notes.
And then Council President.
I do support this and will vote in favor of it. I have just a couple of comments about the legislative position that we were talking about, and I have a committee report coming up at the end of this meeting. 2 meetings that I took part in last week, but the comments are so related to this discussion. I'm going to share them a little bit right now. What I'm hearing across the boards is that there is going to be a huge amount of pressure in Olympia this coming legislative session. School districts are really facing a financial cliff. Cities are obviously looking at their financial pictures. Transportation is going to be down there with a fierce agenda, human services, and so forth and so forth. And so, from that perspective, I think that the position that you've decided to employ this coming legislative session is absolutely needed. There's a quotation that I've been hearing from different sectors. If you're not on the table, you're on the menu. And so I think we want to have somebody who's down in Olympia and working. The idea of whether or not the legislative agenda is compatible across different cities and municipalities is exactly what the Human Services Forum is also wrestling with right now, because we're trying to come up with a legislative priorities that meet the needs of all the Eastside cities as well. And we had a presentation Thursday from the Bellevue School District on their legislative advocacy, the way that they're doing it, and I would commend that to others to take a look at. Across the state of Washington, school districts have come up with 3 top priorities that they're going to lobby for this coming session. I think that is an amazing accomplishment, having been through the school system and knowing how many diverse schools we have in the state of Washington, that they could all come together and agree on 3 priorities. But that's how you get a really powerful, you come together and not talk about every single issue you could possibly talk about, but talk about what are the 1, 2, 3, or maybe even one thing that we hope to accomplish in Olympia this coming year. So John Harrison is the chief of staff in the Bellevue School District, and I'm sure he'd be willing to share that legislative priorities document with anybody who wants to look at it, and I would commend you to do that. And he also makes a great presentation. In terms of the value that we get from ARCH, I can just say, even if a project isn't in Issaquah, we get value from it. I know that we had people that were placed at the Plymouth Crossing. I know the Together Center provided housing for this whole region. And so I see great value in what ARCH is doing. So I will be supporting this. And thank you for indulging me on these comments, which are not exactly related to the topic, but I think that they were relevant for the comments that you made and so forth. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Council President. Councilmember Hall and then Council President. Oh, sorry, no, Council President next. Oh, Lindsay, you're on mute.
Thank you. I put my hand down rather than unmuting. I appreciate that. First, I wanted to say that I just absolutely support the work that Arch does. The maintenance of our affordable housing units is essential. Building throughout the region is very important, and I don't see how we do this as effectively without an organization that brings our cities together to create opportunities that move throughout the region, aren't always in Issaquah, but serve the residents of the region. So with that, my concern with this work plan and proposed budget is the staff member who would be mostly focused on the legislative agenda and looking at policy and areas of funding down there. I would say, first of all, the state legislature is very focused on this area, or at least has been in the last few years, and that came before Arch had someone able to contribute to that. So I want to make sure we recognize that things will still get done even if an organization who is essential to the area isn't putting staff toward the area. The other thing I would say that concerns me is right now your board is filled with staff, and staff are wonderful subject area experts, people who know what's going on in their cities, can contribute that expertise, but they are not the electeds who have to really stand accountable for the budget. And so if we're sitting here as electeds saying, yes, we support Arch, yes, we support putting money into the trust fund, but the board of Arch is going to be the one that approves and really works on what the legislative policy person is working on, that seems incongruent to me. And so my suggestion would be to delay the addition of that staff member until you can get to the point where you've reevaluated what your board and your governance model should look like. Because I think doing it without having elected members of the region on your board leaves a situation where it's a little bit more difficult to become in alignment with the policy areas and proposals and focus areas of the individual cities without having that. So that would be my suggestion, and I do have concerns about that particular position in this work plan and budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Councilmember March, you look like you might want to go. Anybody, did I miss anybody? Let's go to Councilmember Mertz.
Yeah, I mean, I share all these concerns about, I've said before, I've said the last time you were here, Lindsay, my concerns around Arch and doing state level advocacy work. Arch has always been able to do great work here, even when we had a state legislature that was substantially less committed to workforce housing. And so, but I've also, I know what it's like to be on the losing side of a vote, which is why I really appreciated Wally's comments earlier. Sometimes you bring up your concerns and, the majority of the body does what they want to do, but you're clearly hearing loud and clear from a number of folks in this city a real concern. And so I'm going to try to turn it around and say something positive, which is, the next time we see you, I would love to hear some successes from that effort, right? And that's the way to help address it with us. So there's things that the legislature could do that are money, but there's also things that they could do that are regulatory that could help the housing landscape and the workforce housing landscape. And, hopefully, if they can't do things with money, they can do things on the regulatory side to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mertz. Last opportunity for anyone else? Not seeing any hands. So the motion that was moved and seconded is to approve the 2025 Administrative Work Program and Budget for a Regional Coalition for Housing, or ARCH, as recommended by the ARCH Executive Board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That carries unanimously, 6-0. Agenda Bill 8901. Lindsay, there are a few slides for this one as well?
Yep, I can run through those
Let's do
pretty
that.
quickly. So I think you may have had some earlier knowledge that we had previously awarded funding to a project that was going to be developed by Plymouth Housing in the city of Kenmore. That came through our 2022 funding round and came to all of our member city councils for approval in 2023. It was going to be located on Kenmore-owned property, and ultimately that development did not move forward there. There was some exploration with the city of Redmond to see if the project could be preserved, and a lot of the funding commitments preserved, and good design work and programmatic work. And there was a successful partnership with City of Redmond, who agreed to provide a comparable city-owned property located in downtown Redmond, adjacent to the future light rail station there. And so a lot of what you saw previously about the project, the last time it came through, our funding recommendations remains the same. It's going to be the same amount of housing, the same affordability levels, the same housing model, which is a housing first model that if you've come and toured the Plymouth Crossing project in Bellevue, you can learn more about. So Redmond's kind of stepping in and being willing to accommodate the project was able to help us preserve all those other funding commitments, which is an amazing success story. And now they will be working through the City of Redmond's process, which includes city code that has parameters for supportive housing projects, including community engagement requirements, safety and security plan, and other operational coordination with the City of Redmond. So those are now kind of updated in our funding recommendation, which is, again, to just recommit the existing funding that we had already set aside for the project. The total amount is $3.279 for that project. And again, all of the requirements that come with our dollars in terms of the long-term affordability, the population requirements, and some of the management requirements are carrying forward with that. Just as a reminder of the big picture of why we make these investments, we get a lot of leverage for our dollars, and this project is no exception. This is a big picture of the trust fund itself over the life of that program. We've been able to bring in close to $2 billion to help develop affordable housing across the region, and we see this figure is actually growing, about $15 for every dollar that we put into these projects. So we're excited to be able to, again, preserve a lot of that funding that was assembled for this project, and hopefully see it house a number of people in the future. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions on this reallocation? Doesn't look like it, Lindsay. Thank you. That was a lot of good information in there. So the task before the council this evening, if you do not have questions, is to consider making a motion to approve this resolution. Deputy Council President?
I move to approve resolution number
2024-21,
authorizing the reallocation of funding from the Kenmore Supportive Housing Project to the Redmond Supportive Housing Project, and authorizing the duly appointed administering agency for ARCH to execute all documents necessary for funding as recommended by the ARCH Executive Board, utilizing funds from the city's Housing Trust Fund.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any council discussion? Deputy Council President?
Just a quick note that it is 30% AMI, or area median income, which is an incredibly hard thing to do. And so I just want to commend the City of Redmond and ARCH for stepping up. It's just amazing and wonderful that this is happening. And so I just think it's great.
Any other comments? All right, I will reread the motion. It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2024-21, authorizing the reallocation of funding from the Kenmore Supportive Housing Project to the Redmond Supportive Housing Project, and authorizing the duly appointed administering agency for ARCH to execute all documents necessary for funding as recommended by the ARCH Executive Board, utilizing funds from the city's Housing Trust Fund. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? That again carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Thank you very much, Kristen. The next item on the agenda this evening is AB 8890. This is the Lakeside Transfer of Development Rights. I'd like to invite Community Planning and Development Director Minnie Dollywell to the lectern. And Jeff, I believe our Parks and Community Services Director, is also presenting.
Good evening, council members and members of the community. Real quickly, I will share my screen, and we have a real short PowerPoint. Thank you, Tisha. So good evening again. So tonight, I'm going to start off the presentation, but I also want to acknowledge Jeff Watling, our Parks Director, is here in the room, and we have Kim Adams-Pratt from Madrona Law Group, who was really helpful in creating all of these easements. And if you have any legal questions, she's available as well. So in terms of the purpose for tonight's meeting, is to review the transfer of development rights from city-owned park properties to Lakeside, and this is all to comply with the Lakeside Development Agreement provisions, which was entered into in 2014. So a really brief, short background on what are transfer of development rights, or TDRs. They allow increased development on one parcel, which is the receiving site, while protecting another parcel sending site from future development. All at owner's discretion. That's all voluntary in most of the time. Sending sites are typically properties that have 50% or more of the land encumbered by critical areas. They're really challenged for development, but there can be some development that can happen on those, but that can be transferred to another receiving site. So they can be bought between public agencies, between private agency and a public agency, or just between private entities. A lot of times this is handled in the marketplace where one property owner approaches another one, and the cities have the regulatory framework to allow this sort of an exchange. And cities can choose what can be transferred and what cannot. For our code, they can be used to increase impervious surface, height, floor area ratio, and density. So you have a menu of options. You can choose which option you want to select. So that's what these are. In our map, and we redid our map, we did make some updates to this sending sites and receiving sites, but a lot of these sites were originally in place when the city started this program. So that's already an established sending and receiving sites. So a little bit now about the development agreement. So in 2013, the city entered into this development agreement with Lakeside Industries. In 2022, the city was notified by them of their intention to purchase 100 of what is called in the development agreement as mitigated SEPA equivalent residential units. For short, we call them ERUs. And one ERU is one single-family home, or 0.67 multifamily units, or 1,200 square foot residential square footage. And to honor this commitment of 100 units, we had to find which property, city-owned properties could we transfer these 100 units from. So we were able to cobble together about 82 units that existed in terms of certified transfer of development units. But they didn't add up to 100. So hence all the work, great work that Parks did along with our legal staff of creating these additional units. First, parks had to identify which other additional parks could be certified for more units, and so Cora and Bergsma were identified. And then we looked at the total number of units for all 5 parks, Bernston, Engie Johnson, Confluence, Cora, and Bergsma. And then parks had to figure out how much to allocate for this particular sale at this point. So this chart over here, the right-hand column, kind of shows you how many units total add up to 100 from each of the park that would occur if council approves this transaction. And so we took this proposal to Planning Development and Environment Committee on July 9th. The committee recommended approval of this proposal for Lakeside. They requested, they received public comments and then requested us to do a crosswalk of covenants for Bergsma and Cora with the proposed easements. And so Parks has been very busy doing all of that, and Jeff will speak to that in a minute, what that entailed.
Some jump rope there. Thanks, meeting. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you so much. So as I give a little bit of background on both of the proposed conservation easements for the Bergsma and Core property, I just want to recognize Robin Spear, our park planning manager, and Kim Adams-Pratt, who's on the call from Madrona Law Firm. Did a lot of work in doing the research. The crosswalk that you see in your attachment really reflects a lot of work, especially with Bergsma, given the multiple covenants that are on that property. And then they also came up with the final proposed conservation easement language that's before you tonight. So a little bit of background first on the Bergsma property. As you all may recall, this was purchased in 2018 for open space preservation and passive recreation trail connection opportunities from the valley floor up to Cougar Mountain. You also may recall a rather complex funding strategy to make that acquisition happen. The funding strategy included 2 very significant grants, one from King County Conservation Futures through their land conservation easement, otherwise known as LCI. We also were successful in obtaining grant funding through the state, through the Resource Conservation Office, and their urban wildlife habitat category. Both of those pieces of funding included grant covenants that have been since put on the property. Pardon me, next slide. Those are identified in the crosswalk along with the draft conservation easement. I would just want to call out that as we did this review, as we worked with those grant agencies this last month, it's important to recognize that both of those grant funding sources and the preservation requirements within that covenant are complementary to each other and complementary to the conservation easement that's before you. When I say complementary, it really goes back to the intent of that acquisition and making sure that not only that forested hillside is conserved and preserved, but also allows for important recreational trail connection, those passive trail opportunities up into Cougar Mountain. The intent and purpose of both of those grants are certainly well preserved and complementary within the conservation easement before you. I would want to point out as well, given public comment previously, that none of these conservation easements supplant one another. They need to work in a complementary fashion. So I'll give an example since stormwater was brought up. The IMC, through the TDR language, if you look at the IMC, it requires a city to provide opportunity for certain utilities. Doesn't mean they have to happen, but it needs to be considered and allowed. In a case like Bergsma, if the city was to consider a utility on the Bergsma property, the city would still need to work with the grant agencies, RCO and King County, and in some cases that utility might also require a conversion. So again, these covenants are meant to be complementary. We have to abide by the IMC and in saying that certain utilities might be allowed, but it's important to realize, should the city consider doing that through its own conservation easement, we would still need to abide by the conservation easement and the deed that RCO and King County have on that, which could and likely would require us to do a conversion. And what a conversion is that's a financial commitment that the city would need to make to go out and purchase like land based on what that impact of the utility is. So I don't mean to wrap you around like a pretzel here as I say that, but it's really important to realize these three covenants and these three conservation easements complement and need to work with one another. So that's Bergsma. Onto the Cora property. This property was purchased as a life estate in 2008 as part of an broader Issaquah Creek Waterways project and preservation enhancement of the East Fork of Issaquah Creek, but was also purchased at that time with a consideration to be developed, at least a portion of it, as a neighborhood park. As we did research and looked at our own acquisition file, certainly worked with the clerk's office, thank you Tisha, and worked with finance. Funding from that 2008 purchase was identified as 2006 park bond funds as well as general city cash reserves. It appears that there was no grant funding utilized for the purchase of that property. It's important to note that, and that this conservation easement that's before you will be the first. Really, the intent of this easement is the first protection of that, as protecting that as open space and parks in perpetuity. That conservation easement for Cora, as drafted by Robin and Kim Adams-Pratt, is a little different than Bergsma, but it really speaks to the intent of that 2008 purchase as a future neighborhood park and as riparian protection of the East Fork of Issaquah Creek. So that conservation easement is really meant to do just that, is to allow for, we're not going to try in this conservation easement to design that neighborhood park. We're going to create parameters with which the community, through future community engagement, would be able to identify what neighborhood park elements they would want, as well as making sure that it's complementary to the riparian area along the East Fork of Issaquah Creek.
Oh, great. Councilmember Martz.
So I'm confused on that last one. We own the property, right? We're obviously not going to put a McDonald's on that property anytime soon. So what if we do this? If we do this transaction tonight, what changes?
So if we were to do a transfer of development rights, you or the city are taking certain development rights from this property and giving them to, per the development agreement with Lakeside, those development rights. Given the funding that was used for Cora, I would say I'm not recommending, nor I don't think any of you are recommending, but without this conservation easement in place, a future city council could decide to sell it for some other purpose. The conservation easement tonight that's being proposed is in exchange for those development rights. As development rights are moving off of this property, we're exchanging those development rights for this conservation easement, which is saying in perpetuity, this Cora property will be only park purposes, will be used for a neighborhood park and be conserved as a riparian area now and into the future.
But couldn't we do that for free just by rezoning it since it's our property?
Do you want to get our lawyer in on this? Because we have, we have.
I don't know. You tell me.
Do we not have one lawyer? Rachel's not you. She's online. Yeah, because it is complicated, and you have a good question about why. So let's see what her thoughts are. Kim.
Kim Adams-Pratt is here.
Yes.
Hi, Kim. You should be able to unmute now. There you go.
Okay, there I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Wonderful. So
The city is obligated under the development agreement to sell 100 TDRs. So we have that obligation to start with. We could have picked somewhere else other than Cora, but Parks, I would say, did a thorough review and found Bergsma and Cora to be the sites that would make up the additional TDRs we needed to have that full 100. So you're right, Councilmember Cora was not previously obligated by any covenants. So councils, this council, and when it was purchased, could do anything it wanted. You could downzone it. I think it has very low zoning right now, but it could be zoned even lower so that, you know, it's park purposes forever. Zoning can be changed. So a council in 20 years could come back and change the zoning and allow something else. But if you record this covenant, that will not be able to happen. Those development rights that would allow a higher, a denser use will essentially have been removed from the property. And this council will have decided, no, it's only going to be these particular environmental and park purposes. So this is a way to do that, as Jeff said, in perpetuity. I'm happy to answer any follow-up.
Yeah, so I was on council when we did the Lakeside development agreement, and it was, so we, I guess I just don't remember, it was 10 years ago. So it was just part of the deal that we had to do 100 TDRs, and it's just taken us a decade to figure out how to execute that part of the DA?
I wouldn't say it's taken a year to figure out how to execute it.
I said 10
I would
years.
say that Lakeside did not exercise it until 2022. So it's taken since 2022 for us to find those 100, figure out what the price was, etc. But it has been in the DA waiting since then, since the DA was executed. They did have that right.
Oh, I'm surprised that as smart and august of a body as we were in 2013, we found the hands of a future council on this particular issue. But I believe you, so thank you.
Thank you, Kim. That was very helpful. You want to? We're at the recommendation now. Just checking to see if there's any other quick questions. I'll come back for questions as well. Okay, let's finish up and get to the recommendation.
Yes, so administration's recommending that council authorize the transfer of these development rights to Lakeside Industries for a total of 100 TDR units as they've been described in the agenda bill. Again, it's to comply with the development agreement and all the execution of all the necessary documents that will occur. So basically, there are two new conservation easements, one on Bergsma or Harvey Manning Park and Cora properties that'll get recorded. Then there are 5 transfer of development rights certificates on the 5 parks that'll get recorded. And there's a financial transaction will be the first next step. The money will get transferred from Lakeside Industries to the city, or the calculations that we've included in your bill, in your agenda bill, and that was set at 15,000 square feet dollars per unit and cost inflation adjusted. So a total of about, I believe it was 2.6 million. But because these are SEPA mitigated TDR units, so what that means is part of that allocation will go towards impact fees. And we included a table in your chart that shows 1.1 or 1.2 million goes towards different impact fees, and the remainder goes into a fund for purposes of other open space property acquisitions and such that's allowed under the city's code for that type of fund transfer that'll occur. So that'll be the next steps after council decision. If you approve it, the financial transaction will occur, and then we'll execute and record the easements and the transfer certificates. And then Lakeside can apply for additional 100 units. They could apply for 400 units tomorrow if they wanted, but in order to get their entitlements for additional 100 units, this council action will allow them to increase the density by additional 100 ERUs, not units. So 67 additional multifamily units if they choose to do that, in essence. And so that's the next steps. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Minnie. Actually, before I go to council questions, I want to see if Councilmember Hunt, as the chair of the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee, would like to summarize the committee's recommendation on this item.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The Planning, Development, and Environment Committee of this council met on July 9th. And firstly, we all agreed and we had legal counsel confirm that our hands are effectively bound by the 2013 decision. The language was reviewed in that meeting of the development agreement, and it is very clear that this is something that we are required to do by law. So the 100 units, that was something that we all agreed was required. Then there was discussion about if there were other options, if there were other parcels, if there were other sending sites that the city had considered. And we were told that the city had done a thorough review. These were the best sites because their current uses. So for example, the Harvey Manning Park, also known as Bergsma property, that is a park and is serving public benefit as a park, as an open space with trails, and that is also aligned with the community expectations of what that use of that property is, as well as with existing other code that is applied to that, and the other grant restrictions are all aligned with this continuing in perpetuity to be open space in a park. So we reviewed the choices, how the choices were made, and then the specific choices that the city made, and felt that those sending sites that the continued use of these sending sites was in agreement with our understanding of continued public benefit, and that the community would expect that these would continue to be parks. And then additionally, we did express interest in knowing more about the conservation easements. The conservation easements are what are going to be replacing the development agreements, essentially. And so, as was mentioned, our hands are bound by the 2013 agreement. We will effectively be binding the hands of future councils by taking this action tonight. And so we're sort of passing along these requirements. And we asked specifically for a matrix to compare other restrictions and to make sure that the conservation easement really was protecting and conserving these properties in a way that we expected, and that there weren't any conflicts with the other restrictions and the other uses of the property. And that matrix has been provided to us. The Harvey Manning Park, for example, one is on page 19 of our 104-page materials tonight. And it is very complicated. My understanding is that it is providing another layer of protection. It is an additional protection reinforcing the conservation status of this parcel and the other TDR sending sites that have been identified. And with this additional information, that was the one outstanding, that was the thing that we actually focused the most on in our committee conversation. We did request that this come back to full council, but with that additional information in that format, and that has been provided. And the committee did recommend to the full council that we proceed with this as the option for meeting these requirements.
Thank you, council member. So now I will go to council questions. Any questions? Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. By the way, that was an excellent recap of our committee meeting. I asked this at committee, and I've already forgotten what the answer was, but can you go back to the slide that showed the properties and the TDRs that were identified on a particular property, and then how many we were proposing from that? I guess you don't have to go back to the slide. How many we were proposing from that total amount of TDRs associated with the property? We never used the full amount. And I know that was intentional. I remember you speaking to that, and I was hoping you could remind me of why.
quickly find that. I'll let Jeff answer because I think the math.
Yeah, I'm recounting in my July 9th Rolodex as well, and Kim, you might be able to help as well. Yeah, I think this was very much a precaution, conservative. So, although these properties will be protected as parks and open space, right? The conservation easement is clear. If in the future there is need for, say, as we develop that park and want to put a picnic shelter in a certain area, if there is a development right that's needed to do that, we just want to make sure that we're not backing future councils into a corner and, oh my gosh, we can't even do that proposed park development anymore. So really just trying to be ultra conservative.
And Kim, you
Thank you.
turned your camera on, so I'm thinking you wanted to add in.
The only thing I wanted to add was we did only have to sell Lakeside 100, and by looking at the variety of ways that could be done, it didn't really seem possible to leave one of these out. And so instead, the decision was to leave a few in every park for that, just in case. I mean, you don't need an ERU to build a picnic shelter, but might as well just leave a few there just in case. But really, we only needed to sell 100. So.
Okay, thank you. That makes perfect sense. Appreciate you too.
Thank you for that, Kim. Are there any other questions? And would it be okay at this point in time to take a 5-minute recess? Because I know Councilman Martz, you want some clarification on something, but it also would give us a break for 5 minutes. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break. Thanks.
Hey, Rachel.
Read it, Kim. We can hear you in the.
Yes.
Well, this is not an ant. This is... outside and be right back. How are you? Good. Good. Wow. I expect to go, and my son wants to go. Have you actually seen him play? What to do? Watch the one.
Councilmember Walsh, I believe we're going to come back into session. Flash it? Okay. Great. Thanks. Our short recess is over, and we're still in the question portion of this agenda bill. Councilmember Mertz, you had another question.
Nope.
Oh, you're good.
I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay. Fine. They're just looking around at the rest of council and looking at council president to see if there are any more questions on this before poking someone to make a motion. Not seeing any. Either deputy council president or the committee chair can feel free to make a motion. Oh, deputy council president is ready, if that's okay.
So I move to authorize the transfer to Lakeside Industries Incorporated of 100 TDR units as described herein to comply with Lakeside Development Agreement provisions and authorize the execution of all necessary documentation for the TDR transfer.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any council discussion? I am not. Oh, council member, would you like to have a comment? And Councilmember Hall, I see you're also up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. As I mentioned in our recap, I think the part of this that we are able to really have some decision-making power over is the conservation easements. I am satisfied with the information that was provided, both that these are parcels where sending the TDRs is appropriate for those sites so that they can continue to serve the public as open space and as parks, but additionally that the conservation easements are meeting that intent and are protecting these. And so I am supportive of their selection for this purpose as well as the conservation easements.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Cut to the chase, I agree. My sense is, well, let me just say, first of all, thank you to staff for doing what seems like was a monumental lift for the crosswalk. I spent much of the weekend going through that effort. So I appreciate all the time and effort that you put into that. Same with Lakeside for all your support in that. Like I said, I went through it. It was dense. It was a lot. I'm glad that the exercise helped staff catch a couple of items that wanted to update on two of the easements. I think I agree with our chair for the committee. I feel as certain and assured as I can that these conservation easements align with appropriate use and intent. And again, just wanted to share my thanks to staff for going through that monumental effort to get us the information that we requested. So thank you.
That's great. Any other comments or council discussion? Okay, not seeing any. It has been moved and seconded to authorize the transfer to Lakeside Industries, Inc. of 100 TDR units as described herein to comply with Lakeside Development Agreement provisions and authorize the execution of all necessary documentation for the TDR transfer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those,
Aye.
thank you. All those opposed? That carries unanimously, 6-0. That is the end of our regular business portion. Thank you, Minnie. Thank you, Jeff, for being here.
Madam Mayor?
Oh, sorry, City Administrator Bobkowitz.
It's been a while since we've had to do this, but I'd like to do some agenda management with us. It is now 9:15. Jeff Watling is here to give an update on our tremendous summer activities.
Okay.
We could either let him just take a couple minutes right now and give you a very brief overview and then send you his presentation, and also we'll work with our communication staff to get that information out, or we can just send it to you and let Jeff go home.
That sounds great. I just wanted to check on one other item. So, Andrea, you're down here on another informational update, but you're also going to stay with us through executive session anyway? Is that true?
She probably wasn't. I'll speak up for her.
Okay. Is that a lengthy item as well? Lengthier item?
The executive session we need to spend a little time on.
Okay.
So, but I think if we can let Jeff, why don't we just let Jeff send you his presentation, and we will commit to get this out in our e-newsletter for the larger community. We really just want to remind the council of the tremendous efforts that the park staff does. I think we can say thousands of participants between the camps and the concerts and all of that. So we'll send that to you separately. We'll leave Andrea's item after committee reports and the mayor's report, if that's all right.
Council, what do you think? Is that okay? Awesome.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for being here this evening. So we are moving into committee and regional reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Cascade Water Lines Board will be meeting on September 25th, and the Public Affairs Committee for Cascade Water Lines will be meeting on October 2nd. The LTAC Committee will be meeting on September 26th, and I'll be getting together with staff to help set that agenda. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I have a fairly lengthy report tonight for Eastside Fire and Rescue because I wanted to give you all a little bit more substance in this week's report. So bear with me, please. And especially, as we head into our own budget season, I know a lot of you are thinking about EFR pretty closely. So the draft budget is currently with us at the Finance and Administration Committee. As you know, and we hope to refer that up to the full board later this month for their discussion in early October. We've now had about 3 touches as a committee, and also Deputy City Administrator Snyder and myself will be meeting with the Finance Director at EFR later this week. Our time at the FAC, the Finance and Administration Committee, the FAC, has been focused on understanding changes to 3 funds. There's the Operations Fund, which is by far and away the greatest fund, pays for all of our staff and our fire suppression. There's the Equipment Replacement Fund, which funds the regular replacement of apparatus and other equipment. And then there's the Capital Facilities Maintenance Fund, which sets aside money for station maintenance and other facilities initiatives like headquarters. EFR staff has now been over the budget several times to challenge their assumptions and keep costs low, and all the partners continue to agree that we receive an exceptional value for our service, or for the service of EFR. And in fact, if you convert partner contributions and other intergovernmental revenues that EFR receives into a levy rate, we are the most efficient of any fire service agency of our peers in the region, so that's always good. But the committee still feels like we need to explore additional options for cost savings. The proposed increases in 2025 and 2026 would be very challenging on our budgets, and we already know the difficult position that we are in going into the next biennium. So really quickly, to give you an idea of what Issaquah would be looking at, in 2024, our adopted contribution for the city was just over $8 million. As we did the mid-buy last year, we adjusted that to about $8.5 million. Now, our physical contribution didn't go up. We spent down fund balance to do that. The proposal going into 2025 is that it would be about $9.3 million, which is about a 17% increase from our original contribution planned for 2024, and about a 10% increase up from the amended one. Costs are being driven up by many of the things that we're experiencing here, like inflation and staff-related costs, initiatives in the strategic plan. And they're also proposing that we return to basically pre-pandemic funding levels for the equipment replacement fund and the Capital Facilities Maintenance Fund, which for the most part, the committee completely understands we shouldn't really be deploying apparatus outside of their useful life, outside of their life cycle. But even so, we're still evaluating everything within those two funds to ensure safety and find savings for the partners, including exploring some kind of new financing structures for apparatus and potentially delaying our future plans for headquarters. So that's that. That leaves the operations fund. So because the operations fund is so tied to our level of fire and rescue service that the board of directors sets, we've had to now go back to the board to ask for their permission to consider options that are available to reduce services within that fund. So we had a discussion amongst the board last week, and while some of the partners expressed some concern, we now have the support of the full board of directors for Eastside Fire Rescue to explore and look at what levers might be available to us and to study what the impact will be on emergency response and on the agency more generally. I just want to assure everyone on the council that we do not take this exercise lightly. We're committed to putting safety first, but the financial reality is that we need to do our due diligence. We need to put on our fiduciary hats, right, and think about it from this angle. So that conversation is going to take place next week at the FAC, Wednesday the 25th. Another thing that we all seem to agree on is that we need to have some pretty meaty policy discussions next year around the use and level of fund balance, around equipment replacement schedules, around how we fund EFR into the future. So everyone on the board seems to be pretty aligned with that. We're going to have a pretty ambitious schedule of discussions next year. So lots to come on that. Once again, I want to thank Andrea for being so helpful in this process. And just to close out, if anyone has any questions about this process, where we're headed before we have kind of a final budget that Councilmember Martz and I will be looking at together, feel free to reach out to me or Wally or Andrea. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. That was a long report, but you're doing excellent work on the board. Thank you for doing that. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City Council Planning, Development, and Environment Committee met on September 9th, and we had two items. We had COM 0015, which was Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update Draft Review, and we had COM 0071, Comprehensive Plan Draft Environmental Impact Statement. Both of these items have to do with our comprehensive plan update, which is ongoing, and both of these items were not items in which the council is making a recommendation at this point. The first item, comprehensive plan periodic update, was actually a first touch, and we requested more, specifically when this comes back to us, more work on the context setting language for the different sections, as well as reviewed a letter from the environmental board and other reviewers of the draft so far, and wanting to make sure that different sections are consistent, for example. So this will be going to our volunteer boards before returning back to the Planning, Development and Environment Committee. The other item, the comprehensive plan draft environmental impact statement, has had 3 scenarios. The first one is a no action scenario. The second, and this is required by law. The second one is a moderate growth scenario where the majority of growth would happen outside of Central Issaquah. And the third scenario that was looked at in this EIS was intense growth, focusing on Central Issaquah. So the committee observes that third option is more aligned with our current planning, our regional growth center, et cetera. And that as we review the comprehensive plan as a council, we could use the mitigations and especially the analysis of that scenario to make sure that our comprehensive plan is taking into account the findings from the consideration of that scenario. The next step for this is actually that it would go through a public comment process and then would be issued, and then later the council would adopt the whole comprehensive plan. So there was no specific questions for us to weigh in on, but that was the overview of that item. I have one upcoming meeting. The Salmon Recovery Council of the Raya 8 Salmon Recovery Council, which is the name for our watershed, will be meeting on September 19th from 2 to 4:15 p.m. The biggest item on our agenda will be adoption of our 2025 budget and work plan. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Ray has an excused absence this evening, and we'll go to Councilmember Marks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee met Wednesday, September 11th at 7 p.m. at the Mercer Island Community Center, which is gorgeous. Couple of things from that council should know about. Regional boards and committees are coming up. Our applications are due October 17th. Everyone should have received notice of a SCA call that's available on Friday, September 20th from noon till 1 p.m. That you can register for if you have questions for it. We as a city always take great pride in punching above our weight by being very active in this. I will remind that any given city can only nominate one person for any given position on a particular board or commission. We have in the past occasionally had a challenge in that regard, but it's been many years, and hopefully we won't have that problem ever again. There's also a networking dinner Wednesday, October 16th, starting at 5:30 at the Renton Pavilion Event Center. They have a interesting managing relationships with political adversaries, I think is the meaty topic. So that's kind of a lot of fun. And then Services, Safety, and Parks Committee is going to have a very unusual calendar this year, or this month. We're actually going to meet Monday, September 30th at 6:30 till 7 here in Council Chambers, immediately prior to a Committee of the Whole meeting here in Council Chambers with all 7. So interesting calendar gymnastics there. There's only one item on the agenda, COM 0069. School zone speed camera. This concludes.
Thanks, Councilmember Mertz. Deputy Council President DeMichelle.
Okay, so on September 12th, Eastside Human Services Forum had an extended board meeting that featured both the University of Washington professor Lamont Green, and we spent an hour with him in discussing racial oppression, and then followed by the report that I gave you earlier about John Harrison from the Bellevue School District presenting on their legislative agenda and how they put that together. So it was a great meeting. We had a good turnout, and it was a great chance for cities and school districts to interact. So whoops, this one doesn't work that way. Here we go. September 13th, the Eastside Transportation Partnership met with Seashore and Skateboard in downtown Seattle at the PSRC offices, and it was a great meeting, and I believe that you received all the materials today were forwarded to you by Wally, and so you can look through those. There's a couple of things I wanted to highlight, though. One is from the PSRC, we had reports from every single transportation agency, but PSRC gave us a really good data report on where we are. And the one thing that really struck me was we are right on schedule for population growth in King County. The pandemic did not stop us at all, which is just counterintuitive. And I even questioned the data expert afterwards and said, what does this mean? And he said, if you look at King County, we are just right, we're growing like crazy. I did ask him, I said, well, what about the impact of affordable housing? And he agreed that what they're seeing is a lot more single people, young people, and fewer families are coming into King County. But in terms of job growth and population growth, we're right on projections. The other thing that I thought was quite interesting, Michelle Allison, who's the general manager at Metro, gave a report on their behavioral health program, which they now have expanded to 3 more routes. And over the last year, they've seen a reduction in drug incidents on buses of 43%, which I think is amazing. And she credits that to the behavioral health program that they've instituted, along with the increase in transit security. So that I think is a really good performance for what was a really bad situation a couple of years ago. Other than that, and then the final thing was that the bus system and others agree that the pattern of travel right now is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Mondays and Fridays, weekends are really not commuter traffic anymore, and this seems to be stabilizing into a permanent pattern. So our transportation agencies are starting to develop plans around that new pattern. So those were the 3 highlights. But if you look through the materials, it was just chock full of information from all of the different agencies. So that's my report. The Regional Transit Committee has been canceled for both September and October. Yeah. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Council President?
Thank you. Short report tonight. The King County Affordable Housing Committee and the Puget Sound Regional Council's Growth Management Policy Board will both be meeting on October 3rd, virtual meetings, and the agendas have not yet been released. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Moving on to the mayor's report. There will be an executive session this evening to discuss pending potential litigation per RCW 42.30.110 per N1 per NI. Originally, we were going to put this in for 30 minutes, but I think what we'll do is we'll start with 15 and we'll do extensions if needed, depending on questions. This past Saturday, I did get to visit the Issaquah Farmers Market. During this, some exciting news that I wanted to share was that during this season and last season, we have begun to enter into EBT and Market Match, which are 2 programs that help support families and individuals with lower incomes to be able to buy fresh fruit and vegetables at the market. So last year, EBT went into place. This year, Market Match went in. So the farmers market distributed over $3,200 in EBT and $2,500 in Market Match this year. The vendors have redeemed over $5,000 worth of Market Match dollars, which I wanted to show you. This is the little package that the community Parks and Community Services staff prepare for those who come in with and are qualified for the program. And these are have currency value, meaning I have to send this back to the team that hands them out. But it's been a great program where individuals or families can come in, they can receive their bucks, and then they can move through the market. In the EBT program, they can spend the dollars that they're getting at the grocery store or at the farmer's market, and then the market match. I believe Victoria or Councilmember Brown has it right now. The market match may be for any farmer's market in the region. So the two programs are different and they complement each other and expand the amount of funding available to families for fresh fruit and vegetables. I think it's just a wonderful thing that we now have this at our farmer's market. Almost half of the EBT shoppers are local residents, with 45% of the shoppers coming from the Issaquah and Sammamish area. And this, not only does this program help our lower income community increase their access to fresh fruits and vegetables, it also helps increase the sales that our farmers and businesses at the market can do through this program. So it's a total win-win for our community. There are 2 Saturdays left in our farmers market program. So come on out, don't miss a chance to check it out. It's also an exciting time of the year as the salmon make their way back home to the Issaquah hatchery for spawning season. Now is a great time to visit the hatchery to see the salmon and learn about the important work being done by the hatchery staff. Bring your family and friends to take a free tour of the hatchery while the salmon are here and beat the Salmon Days crowds. For those of us that have lived here for a while, the salmon start coming in August and continue to come through December. So there's a lot of opportunity for us locals to get to see this amazing thing. And lastly, I left an invitation with each of you this evening. I'm sorry, Lindsay, I can't really hand you yours through the screen, but it's about the Issaquah Arts and the project called the Arts Sanctuary, which they are inviting you to join them tomorrow night on the Harvest Moon. September is known as the season of creation, and Issaquah Arts will be hosting an open house at the Arts Sanctuary from 7 to 9 p.m. on Tuesday, September 17th. That will include a sneak peek of the art installation in progress for the Labyrinth of Lanterns, set to premiere on September 21st. This sneak preview will inspire you to create and participate in this community art project that celebrates art, nature, and spirit. Everyone is invited to drop off a do-it-yourself lantern made out of large-sized aluminum cans to contribute to the Labyrinth of Lanterns art installation. The Arts Sanctuary is located at Our Savior Lutheran Church at 7745 Front Street South. We're really excited about this community art project. That concludes the mayor's report, and now we'll move to informational items, and we will start with ID 1756. This is an informational update on the 2023-24 general fund budget, and I'd like to invite Deputy City Administrator and Interim Chief Financial Officer Andrea Snyder to the podium. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'm Andrea Snyder, and I will try to keep this as quick as possible. I know the evening is dragging on, but we wanted to provide an update on the biennial budget. And as soon as it starts responding, here we go. So the purpose of tonight is to provide an update on the 2023-2024 biennium budget. We don't normally do this in September. Typically, on a typical budget year, what we would do is have the final budget amendment occur at the end of the year. This year is a little different, and the reason why we're coming to you this evening is because we have looked at our revenues and we've looked at our expenditures that we forecast through the end of the year. And we are concerned that we may have an undesignated ending fund balance for the general fund that would fall below that 15% of general fund expenditures if spending were to proceed as planned and as adopted in our budget and various amendments. And so, as you may recall, typically we like to keep the ending fund balance to be 15% of general fund expenditures. And so dipping below that is against our best practice and policy. And so we wanted to talk about that with you tonight, look at some of the history of those expenditures over the past couple of budget amendments, the revenues, revisit the revenues that we last discussed at the City Council retreat, also inform Council about what the administration is doing to reduce expenditures in 2024 and avoid dipping into the ending fund balance any further, and also talk about what the expected impacts will be to the 25-26 biennium budget that we are currently drafting. My laptop has decided to not be that responsive this evening. Okay, so here's the history of council touch points with the 2023 and 2024 biennium budget and some of the budget amendments. So first, of course, in the end of 2022, council adopted the budget that anticipated difference between revenues and expenditures of $9.2 million in 2023 and $5.2 million in 2024. And again, this is really just focusing on the general fund. And what that means when we look at that $9.2 million number and the $5.2 million number is that we had planned to eat into that ending fund balance and spend that down. We had heard direction from council that we wanted to put this money into good use, that having a large ending fund balance wasn't really serving the community. We wanted to deliver on more capital projects and more services in general. So council anticipated a spend down of the ending fund balance, and that's the budget that we adopted. Then we go into December of 2023, our first mid-biennium budget adjustment that included a net negative impact to the general fund ending fund balance of $4.7 million. We're going to talk a little bit about what those expenditures were and detail those out a little bit more later in the presentation. June 2024, there was another budget amendment that included under $500,000 of new expenditures, mostly urgent one-time facility needs like broken HVACs and things like that. In July, of course, we had the City Council budget priority setting retreat that really focused on 25 and 26. But at that retreat, we provided a forecast of revenues, including what we'd anticipate in 2024. We're going to revisit that also a little bit later in the presentation. But we did anticipate a decrease of general fund revenues in 2024 by $3.5 million. So that was a summary of the council touch points and some of the budget amendments that we've had so far. But let's also take a moment to take a step back and look at how we got here with these concerns about dipping into the ending fund balance. First, as I have already discussed, council adopted a budget with a planned use of the ending fund balance. We knew that we were going to be dipping into it. That was a goal to utilize those funds and not just let them sit there unused. With, again, that policy of not dipping below 15%. We also, in the city, had a history of underspending in the budget. And we'd heard from council, how do we make sure that we spend what we are budgeting? And how do we make sure that we are better delivering on those programs and services to the community? So what we've done for the 2023-2024 budget was we budgeted less conservatively than we have for other budgets. Previous years, several years back, for example, we would budget for every position in the city to be full. So we would budget for every single position to be occupied 100% of the time. Then a few years ago, we decided to do a planned underspend of 3%, knowing that we have turnover, certain positions are vacant for a certain amount of time. So let's budget to reflect that so we can budget more accurately to what we're spending in personnel. In 2023, 2024, we looked at some of the actuals and vacancies of the years prior, and we tightened that up. Instead of 3%, we went to a 4% planned underspend. And so what that means is we had less room to play with when there was perhaps a little more spending in overtime in certain departments. Some departments that we've looked at for 2024, that 4% underspend is just about on target for where they were in their personnel and their vacancies. So that didn't leave us a lot of room to play with when maybe overtime went over or some other types of expenditures were more than planned due to inflation or other factors. So that left us a little less room. Also, it should be said, this is our first biennium budget. And so we predicted these revenues in 2024 back in 2022 when the budget was adopted. So being able to foresee some of these dips in revenues is a little difficult. What I would say is we've learned some lessons with this budget being our first biennium budget. And some of those lessons would include taking a look at our revenues a little earlier, doing earlier forecasts than maybe what we've performed, and keeping a closer eye on budget as we progress throughout the biennium. Another thing, as we've already discussed when we looked at council touch points and budget amendments, we've had some additional expenditures post-budget adoption that really focused on city priorities and also urgent needs. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about what those were, but we did have expenditures come up that were fairly urgent that we felt we needed to address. Taking another step back, looking at actual general fund revenues versus expenditures since 2014. So this is looking at the past 10 years, again, of actuals, not just what was budgeted, taking out ARPA funds, American Recovery Plan Act funds, because those, I think, skew some of the numbers. But looking at this, you see revenue outlined in green, expenditures in orange, and what this shows is a decrease as we look at 23 and 24, of course. 24 is year to date. But what we're seeing with this trend is a trend that we're seeing across the country. There's been several articles published recently. I think City Administrator Bob Kowitz is going to be sharing one of those if he hasn't already, that talk about what we've seen as a result of the American Recovery Plan Act and the other stimulus that was offered in the pandemic, and how that spurred a lot of spending nationwide. And so we're seeing revenues for state governments, local governments go up in 2021, 2022. But since then, they're really coming down. And so that stimulus worked, but we have not, as a nation, seen those revenues be sustaining, or that type of spending be sustained over time. And so we're seeing this trend across local governments all over the nation of declining revenues. And so we're in good company, I guess, but it is certainly a trend that other local governments are grappling with, and we see it here really reflected in this graph for us as well. So what did we get for this increased spending that we talked about with these budget amendments and wanting to spend down some of the ending fund balance? First, we know that transportation is a really important priority for the Issaquah community. We've heard that over years. We were able to sustain a high level of investment in our pavement management program, PMP. We also added funds in 23-24 to the CMP, or the concrete management program. And one of the things we've been able to achieve there is a third of our known high edges or trip of risks have been fixed in this biennium, which is a great accomplishment. We also have piloted MetroFlex, that flexible transit option, and have been able to hire a new transportation engineer in support of some of our capital projects. But perhaps even more important is the additional cost for police and jail operations. So that budget amendment that we had in December of 2023, almost 50% of that budget amendment really went towards police and jail operations, including positions, new jail consumables. As we have more people in jail, those operational costs go up. As we have more police officers to make arrests, there's more people in jail as well. And also be competitive in our recruitment of officers and corrections staff and other police professionals. We also, with those budget adjustments, were able to add to our human services team, including behavioral health coordinators, a park ranger. We were able to perform some urgent facilities maintenance. And also, we had a large mandatory insurance cost increases, not only for the jail, but for the city as a whole. And we anticipate insurance costs increasing greatly as well in the next couple of years. As a reminder, you've seen this graph at the July City Council priority budget priority setting retreat, but I just wanted to remind you of some of the changes that we are seeing in our revenues. So specifically from what we had forecasted and adopted for 23-24, we're seeing declines in sales tax. Especially construction sales tax. We are also seeing a decline of what was anticipated for business and occupation tax. And of course, community planning and development the permitting fees. If there's a decline in construction sales tax, there's usually a corresponding decline in permit fees as well. As we talk about a decline in permit fees and a decline in construction, I wanted to provide this graph because we talked a little bit about construction at the City Council retreat in July. So I wanted to provide a little bit more information in this presentation. This graph is showing construction value by year. This is a good proxy for us in thinking about permit revenues because our building permits are based off of the construction value. Also, a construction value can be a good proxy for trying to determine what the construction sales tax would be. So as we can see, this is a very volatile graph. And we look at the construction values by year in Issaquah since the year 2000. And it's very hard to predict when a project will come in. And so what we have done in the city of Issaquah is we have used permit fees, we have used construction sales tax in support of operations. And in some ways that has balanced the budget in the past. And as we talk in the future about what, how could we predict our revenues better, or why is it sometimes that we get more revenues than what we predicted? Sometimes it's because of construction sales tax. It can really vary in a smaller city like Issaquah as one big project comes in. So it is difficult to predict. What is the administration doing to address these budget concerns in 2024? First, we have implemented a hiring freeze, and so we're reviewing all the positions, budgeted or not, if they need to be replaced. And we have also been working on a reduction of 2024 expenditures. I've been meeting with every department to try to figure out how do we reduce some of the spending. Even though we're here later in the second half of the year, we can reduce some of our spending on different projects and programs. We're also looking at using other types of funding other than the general fund revenues to help pay for some of our expenditures. One of the things that I've found is that we can be a little bit more aggressive with our use of mitigation funds for some of our expenditures. We don't need to use general fund for every type of expense. So making sure that we allocate the cost to the right type of revenue that we receive. So we've been able to shift some of that obligation away from the general fund to other types of sources of revenue. And work continues to reduce costs in 2024. As we are also creating the 25-26 biennium budget, we're still working on 2024 to make sure that we hit that 15% target of ending fund balance and that we don't dip too far below that 15%. We do anticipate some impacts as a result of this. So as we have a reduced ending fund balance, that puts some pressure on 25 and 26 to make sure that we're not dipping any further into that ending fund balance, to make sure that we can maintain that 15%. So that's always our goal, is we want to make sure we have plenty of reserves in the general fund should other emergencies arise. So we are looking at staffing reductions in 25 and 26. We're working with departments on identifying which positions those would be. We're also looking at reducing capital spending, those projects that are funded by the general fund. What projects, especially with reduced staffing, do we need to delay, defer, reduce the scope of, et cetera, as we have a reduced capacity to implement on those projects? Same with programs as well. We anticipate having an ongoing issue with revenues and expenditures, and so we're looking at how do we reduce those ongoing expenses. And of course, throughout the budget process, as we discuss 25 and 26, we'll be seeking council direction to ensure that the budget is aligned with your priorities. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to discuss these reductions that we anticipate for 25 and 26 and make sure they're reflective of your priorities. How could the budget picture change? So between now, especially what we're anticipating for 25 and 26, how could it change? Well, interest rates could change. So We have heard that the Fed may change interest rates this week. Those interest rates affect borrowing, affect real estate development, affect construction. So we'll see how those interest rates change and affect some of the construction in the area. Also, real estate excise tax. We're a small enough town that if Costco bought another office building tomorrow or bought another office building in 25, that could really significantly change our budget picture. And so real estate excise tax is something that that is also hard to predict and can fluctuate dramatically. We already talked a little bit about that construction increase. That would have multiple effects on our revenue, construction sales tax, permit revenues as well. Want to talk a little bit about timing and next steps. So first, as we continue to look at the 2024 budget, we will be coming back to council, as we typically do in any typical year, for the last budget adjustment. That would be in December. So that's when we'll take a look at what are those numbers, how are we balancing the budget by the end of 2024. Now, also thinking about 25 and 26, this is a bit of a different budget calendar than what we've had in the past. And so that's because we've had some extraordinary circumstances, and we're asking a little bit for council's patience with this 25-26 drafting. Of course, as you know, I'm your interim CFO. We are still looking for a finance director full-time to fill this position. Our budget manager, unfortunately, has had to attend to some health issues, and she has been staying at home to take care of herself. So we are without a budget manager at the current moment. We are trying to get external help to assist with this, but that has also been difficult to do. So we have a small but mighty budget team. It's just been a little difficult, as well as looking at this decline in revenues, the growth in expenditures. It's a lot for us to manage. And so the budget process looks a little different this year, but I do want to reassure council that it meets all statutory requirements. So while it's not typical to what we normally do, we're certainly in line with state law. So for the 25-26 budget, we will be transmitting a preliminary budget. This is going to look like what you would see in your budget document as budget on a page. So it's essentially going to be all of the funds, high-level summary. And then during mid-October, we think we'll know enough of that budget development and what it looks like to be able to start having one-on-one conversations with council and provide some more briefings about what we anticipate are going to be some of the challenges in 25-26, what the budget is going to look like. October 28th, we'll have the budget transmittal and also begin deliberations and be able to outline where are we with revenues, expenditures, what are some of those policy questions that we'll be looking at and discussing throughout the rest of the budget process. November 4th is a budget public hearing, and we have several other dates for budget deliberations, November 12th, 18th, December 3rd, looking at budget adoption in December 9th. So the budget adoption would be a little bit later than what we've done in the past couple of years, but certainly not out of line with what's done across the state or even what we've done in our past as a city as well. And at this point, I'd like to ask if there's any questions.
That's a lot of information. Looking for raised microphones, raised hand. Councilmember Martz.
So when, this whole issue of construction fees and our sensitivity to it, a few years ago, we had a pause on new approval of new development while we ironed some things out internally. Was there anything instructive during that pause? Because I realize the revenues from construction lag approvals by a certain amount, but is there anything from that helps us address this potential dry spell?
Do you mean lessons learned of the moratorium?
Correct. I assume that that moratorium had an impact for a while on construction revenues. Did we learn anything from managing that well?
I think what we tried to do following that was to be a little bit more conservative for how we budget the larger projects. So when we have developers talking to us and saying, we're going to come in for permits next year, we believe them a little less because there's a lot of talk until they actually submit for permits or until they actually pick them up. And so I think that we try to be a little bit more conservative, but the pressure remains to use those funds. And then when we get all of those revenues, it looks like we're flush with cash, but maybe it's a one-time thing or it's a very volatile, sporadic thing. So I think as City Administrator Bob Kowitz and I are looking at the data, we're talking about how can we create a new policy or practice in which we set some sort of baseline of expectation. We'll receive this amount of funds, and then anything over that, really think about applying that towards capital instead of using that to balance ongoing or operating expenditures. And so I think that's something that we should discuss, we should continue to discuss in the future and develop that practice further.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions on Andrea's presentation? Looking at Council President, she does not have her hand up. Anyone else? Andrea, thank you for that. It's going to be an interesting year. There was a lot in your presentation to share. Thank you. There is no formal action requested by Council on this item this evening. It was meant to be an update. The next item we deferred, which was ID 1761, the informational update on the Parks and Community Services Department summer highlights. Our Parks and Community Service Director is going to submit the presentation, and we can discuss that later. Going to go to good of the order. I know Deputy Council President DeMichelle has an item, and then I have a few meeting announcements.
Thank you. So can you head that down? Yeah, I'll send it this way.
Did this go up by email as well, Barb?
Wally and yeah. So I know we're late, and so I just wanted to briefly give you this. This is a impact report from Influence the Choice, and the highlight here is there would not be an Influence the Choice if it were not for the City of Issaquah, because the City of Issaquah acted as the fiscal agent for this organization for 10 years. But if you look at the numbers, this is sort of a return on investment report that I wanted to be sure you all saw. Significant reductions in alcohol, marijuana, and prescription drug abuse statistics in our school district. And also the good news that we have received 2 major grants in the last couple of months. One is from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration with a STOP grant that's worth $60,000 a year for the next 5 years, each of the next 5 years. And HIDA has funded us at $50,000 a year. Again, in that case, that is an ongoing grant that we are eligible for as long as they're offering it. So, so we are in a very good place, but I wanted to share the good news that we got from the Healthy Youth Survey in 2023, which was administered in the fall of 2023 and reported in the spring, last spring. And we have not had an opportunity to share this yet with the community, so I wanted to give you a peek at the numbers. I believe we're coming, or Influence the Choice Executive Director is coming, I think, 2 weeks from now to talk about Substance Abuse Prevention Month, which would be one of the most important months in our schedule. So I just wanted to share that with you. Any comments or questions? Or
Thank you for bringing the printout.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the time, because I know we're running late.
Councilmember Hunt?
A very brief note on, because we are not going to be presented with the informational update from Director Watling on the Parks and Community Services Department summer highlights. I did want to note that there was more availability, more capacity for the summer programs for children that I, as a mom of 2 young kids in elementary school, noticed over the summer. And this is something that I and other council members have spoken about, the need to be ready by your computer when you can sign up, because they sell out so fast because they're so in demand and there's such great programs. So I wanted to say I think there's still room, and in talking with other families, there's both more need, but at the same time, there was a notable improvement, and wanted to make that note on the record.
Thank you. I have Councilmember Hall and then Council President.
Well, good news, because you don't have me on to Council President.
Oh, there we go. Council President.
Thank you. I just wanted to let the council know that we have had some conversations and requests from organizations to consider, I don't know what it would be called, an ordinance or basically a request to review I-2117. Sorry, I'm sick. It's late. 2117. And consider whether or not we would want to basically create an endorsement for or against. That is tentatively planned to come to the October 7th meeting. We had received information from Stacey Van McKinstry previously about how much the Climate Commitment Act has funds contributing toward the city of Issaquah, with a potential loss of almost $5 million, both in guaranteed funds and potential. And so that was what really spurred the interest in considering that as a topic. So if there are any questions about that, we're still in planning on what that looks like for October 7th. But I just wanted to give a heads up that that is a potential coming back to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. I'm not seeing any other indication of good of the order. So the couple of meetings that are coming up, the September 23rd Committee of the Whole meeting is canceled. There will be a Committee of the Whole meeting at 7 p.m. September 30th, following the Services, Safety, and Parks Committee meeting. The anticipated agenda items include public safety facility, leasing and next steps, 2025-26 budget, transmittal of the preliminary budget. An executive session regarding collective bargaining will be occurring at the conclusion of the Committee of the Whole. And the next regular City Council is Monday, October 7th. And the anticipated agenda items include the credit card service fee policy. So at this point in time, if there are no other good of the order items, we will go into an executive session. The session this evening is to discuss pending potential litigation per RCW 42.30.110(1)(I). The item is expected to take approximately 15 minutes. Action will be anticipated in open session. Please note that the executive sessions are closed to the public and will be going in at 10:08 p.m. And I ask the city clerk to move the city council and any relevant staff into that separate session with the meeting. Good night, Chris.